Oh, there, Mark's on. Yay.
And April, are we recording April yet?
Yes.
Okay.
It's starting. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. I want to welcome you to our second day of our spring quarterly meeting of the OWEB board. Today is April 27th. And I just want to say good morning and let you all know that I appreciate you and your time and your energy and your expertise. And I look forward to a wonderful day or a few hours with all of you. And with that being said, do we have any late agenda items, Lisa or anybody else? Okay.
I don't think so.
All right, thank you. I'm having horrible internet connections today. It's the worst I've ever had. So if I go on and off, it's my internet, sorry. But I am going to head on down to item number, I guess we're going to J, right, Liza Jane?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Well, good morning, board members. For the record, Lisa Sharplow-Hansen, Executive Director with OWEB. It's great to be with all of you again, and I look forward to actually meeting everybody in person in July when we get together. I think my report is longer than what I've provided in the previous two meetings when I've been with you, but you got a sense for it yesterday. The OWEB team has been pretty busy, even since January when we met the last time. So first, I want to acknowledge, we've brought on 7 new positions since the first of the year, and that has been an immense staff load. And so, I need to say big thank yous to Courtney and others on the team that really worked on getting those out, getting the PDs done, because it takes some work to hire somebody within the state system. The other thing I want to mention to you is just give you a sense of how much OWEB has grown since the close of session last June. So at the end of session last June, we had 36 positions in the agency. At the end of the February short session 2022, we had 46 positions in the agency. OWEB has gone from having no general fund in our budget prior to the current biennium to having 52 million-ish in our budget. So just a significant growth. So I think in terms of the new staff, I'd like to have the managers just introduce the staff so that the board has a chance to meet everybody. So Courtney, you want to take that?
Happy to start. I am going to start with a name you all heard a lot yesterday. Linda Replinger was the first of the collection of new hires that came on. Linda is our new publication specialist and comes from DAS Publications and has been a phenomenal asset to the team, and you saw her handiwork yesterday. I also want to give kudos to Linda. She has started actively managing the passive Facebook page OWEB has had for a long time, and highlighting a lot of the content of our partners around the state. So I encourage you guys, if you use social media, to find our Facebook page and like it. So welcome, Linda. Then I want to introduce the second hire, Max Chabra. Max is working on our drought and fire general funded position program. So Max is providing support to the drought staff as well as running all of our grant agreements, and has jumped in and is learning our online systems and building applications in our online application system, and has been a really quick learner coming from outside of the state system, and has had to learn all things state and OWEB, and has been a great asset in helping getting that program up and running, which Renee will talk more about today. And finally, we have recently hired Ivy Clark Henry. We took Ivy from the Department of Forestry, and Ivy is our grant program support specialist and is really helping us build the capacity of the agency. We had one person providing administrative support to the whole agency for the last couple of years. So Ivy is a great asset and will be helping and be deeply involved with our open solicitation as well as FIP program. So great to have all three of these amazing staff on. They have jumped in and helped us, and a great addition to the OWEB team.
So why don't we have Renee talk about the team that's come on to help us with our emergency response programs, and then Corey, okay, great. Go for it, Renee.
Great, thanks, Lisa. For the record, Renee Davis, Fire, Klamath, and Drought Programs Manager for OWEB. So we now have on board what I like to think of as the Drought Wonder Team. So we, a few weeks, I think about 3 weeks ago, brought on Amy Charette into, and is Amy on the screen? She's in our operations and policy analyst position for the Drought program. So Amy comes to us from the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. So many of the board members and certainly many of the OWEB staff have known Amy for quite some time. We're really fortunate to have her on board with us. We also, at the same time that Amy started, Teresa DeBartoleben started with us as part of a job rotation from Oregon Department of Agriculture. So Teresa has been around OWEB programs for years, again, known quantity for us. We're thrilled that ODA was willing to let us borrow her for the remainder of the biennium as part of the job rotation. She is in a natural resource specialist 4 position as a drought program specialist. And now we're in day 3 of Heidi Hartman's tenure with OWEB. Heidi came to us also as a drought program specialist, NRS 4 position. She came from Department of State Land. So we definitely have done a good job of bringing incredible people over from some of our sister agencies. We are thrilled to have all 3 of these folks on board right now in the midst of a really big lift, in particular on the Jefferson SWCD soil conservation work, which Teresa is serving as point on, the Klamath off-channel livestock watering well work, which Amy has been serving as point on. And now that Heidi's here, it's really all hands on deck to get those first 2 programs stood up, followed up by the irrigation modernization programs and then drought resilience. So please take some time to welcome these 3 folks when you have an opportunity by email or in the chat. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you. Mark, you have a question?
Yeah. Oh, my Lord, you stole another person from the Department of Ag. So, welcome, Teresa, but there's a little bit of humor there.
She's just a borrow for now.
Oh,
job
okay.
rotation, we'll call her a borrow.
I would not want to be the Department of Ag director because Lisa's really cleaning out. Sorry,
Okay, now with that, we're going to move on. I need to keep my friends in state government. So I think, a couple more acknowledgements. There has just been such great work done by our staff. Prior to the hires, I think you all know that we had the emergency money come in for drought, and staff worked really hard to do the outreach to begin to set up those programs ahead of time. So, thank you, Stephanie and Renee, for all of your work building the foundation so that when we were able to get the staff on, they were able to hit the ground and just run with that. We made it through a special session since the last time we talked. Eric Hartstein is our legislative coordinator, and he did an amazing job helping us navigate through the session and work through the issues as they came up from session. So the other thing, I'm just going to give a quick shout out, and you'll hear more about this later, is the work of the team around the climate resolution and the listening and engagement sessions. I think they have taken an incredibly thoughtful approach to the work that they're doing. And I appreciate the board members that have weighed in, to try and help us improve those sessions. But it has been a big lift for that team. And I'm really proud of how they've taken it and moved that forward. So Courtney kind of stole my thunder about like us on Facebook. I'm really excited about the work that Linda is doing with our Facebook page in terms of keeping it fresh, amplifying the work of our partners to make it more available to people, and to really let people know about the good work that's going on around restoration and habitat work. So if you haven't liked us, like us. The other thing, if you haven't done it yet, if you want to get more information from OWEB, make sure that you have signed up for our Gov delivery service. That's where most of the information from OWEB goes out in terms of meetings and any type of notices. Another kind of thank you along the way. We had a really, oh, Jamie, go ahead.
I think Liza Jane had her hand up first, so just wanted to defer.
Thank you, Jamie. And Lisa, I was just wondering if there's limitations or rules around Facebook versus Instagram, and if agencies use Instagram, if that's something we would consider.
So I don't know of any rules around which of the social media platforms to participate in. We could definitely look into it and consider it. I think OWEB had started to do a little bit on Facebook, and so we just have used that as a place to begin to revamp our work. And really, Linda's putting together a pilot for 3 months so that we can look and see what type of activity we have, what the effort is in terms of maintaining that page and keeping it fresh, and monitoring for comments so that we can be responsive to the public.
Okay. I think actually from this old girl, Facebook's a little old school. So there's a way that when you post on Facebook, it shows up on Instagram. It just really broadens your, audience opportunities. So
Thanks for that, Liza Jane.
go Linda.
Great. Jamie.
Just really appreciate how hip Liza Jane is, and that language itself is probably dating me. So I'm looking forward to your TikTok videos, Liza Jane. No, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity just to say, as a board member, a warm welcome to everyone who's joined. And then also in that, recognize just the phenomenal foundation that has been really established by Courtney, both Eric's, Renee, and many other people at OWEB. I'll probably even get myself for trouble in saying this, but I've never been prouder of being on a board than OWEB. I have tremendous colleagues on the board, and also, but that's really built on the foundation of the team, the OWEB team as a whole. So just a wholehearted welcome. And then also you're building on a tremendous foundation really established by the team that was there when I joined, let me just say, and really building forward. So tremendously proud of the work we're doing. It's really tough, and you heard a lot of that yesterday, and you've heard, I know there's the work before us is great, but it's all work that's having an impact on the lives of everyday Oregonians and all Oregonians, and we're tremendously proud of that. So just wanted to say a personal welcome to everyone who's joined, but also to say that you've got really great colleagues who have established a real foundation of trust across the state and a real sense of pride in this organization that the board feels, but also that others feel in the team that helped to get us here. So just wanted to express that to everyone.
Thanks, Jamie. So you heard about it just a little bit yesterday. We had a really great initial DEI committee meeting. And one of the pieces of advice that Stephanie and I took away from that meeting, thank you, Molly Kyle, for this, was pick 3. And so we took that very seriously in terms of reaching out to 3 entities that we thought would have interest in OWEB that we may not have had as traditional partners to date. And so just to give you a couple of those, for example, we reached out to the Albina Vision Trust. One of their advisors is someone we had worked with in the Capitol over time, and he's putting us in connection with their new executive director. And so we're excited about starting that conversation and learning more about their work and how the work of OWEB may connect with them as well. We recently met with a really large cross-section of agricultural organizations. Again, we built upon some of the relationships that Stephanie and I had from our previous jobs to introduce them to OWEB and identify some potential opportunities where their organizations or the sectors that they represent may find interest in the work of OWEB and getting them connected in through our Gov delivery, et cetera. And we actually received a thank you note this morning from one of those groups saying, thanks for reaching out. We really appreciate the additional effort that you're making in introducing us to your new work. And then also, Stephanie and I met with the Oregon Community Foundation. I think it was probably early March-ish. And part of the effort there was to look for opportunities for collaboration and to think about places where if OWEB can't fund something, are there other grantors and other partners that we can find that can help fund the good work that comes to us in collaboration for parts and pieces of it. And so really it's trying to build a network of people that we can share the great projects that come forward, even if they don't fit within OWEB's current process. Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, just to jump on there, don't forget about the Oregon Conservation and Recreation Fund. It now has $15 million in its fund, and it's directly related to what OWEB funds also. So, and the private forest accord is going to have, I guess, about $5 million a year, and that's to go back into riparian restoration, fish and wildlife habitat, those kind of things. So don't forget about that partnership, because they're looking for places that they could partner with others to make their funding go further too. Great.
Thanks. Thank you so much for that. And then just one other group we'll mention, we have a meeting scheduled, I think mid-May, with the Oregon Organic Coalition, and to really find where some of the work that we do here at OWEB is of interest to them as well. So we're moving forward in terms of trying to find new partners and build relations outside of the traditional ones that we've had. A few projects that I wanted to just bring to your attention and visit with you about, because I think they represent some of the challenges that we've talked about. And one of them was a challenge that Meg brought up yesterday. And I think it's thinking about people overlay in conservation work, and how do we weigh that with what we've learned, through our DEI trainings recently. We had a project that the board awarded in October to Greenbelt Trust. And it was $1 million land acquisition for an area of oak woodlands. Recently, Greenbelt has decided they are going to turn that money back to us. And the reason being is we didn't align really very well in terms of some of our goals. Greenbelt had this property that was an addition to existing conservation and had a vision for more recreation in it and more opportunities for people. One of the things that really struck me in the conversation with their executive director was trails for all. And OWEB, we've traditionally thought about conservation in very focused on the ecological values. And I think when we think about trails in our current way of thinking, we think of maybe small paths, walking paths, which doesn't necessarily encompass that trails for all vision. And so I put this out here because some of you may hear about it. And to say, I think as we move forward with more conversations around DEI and what we learned this morning, we'll continue some of these hard conversations about how do we think about how people overlay in some of our conservation work. And I'll do some exploration between now and July around some of our funding and opportunities or constraints that are there and how we might think about that maybe a little different. Yeah, Jamie.
Yeah, just to say, I put in a plug for making sure the accessibility issues are valued, and if it means re-looking at, and if that's, I hear what you say, we'll talk about this at our next meeting. But if there's a policy position we have right now that needs to be revisited, I would strongly encourage that. Just to share real quickly, one of my favorite expressions that I've ever heard around the work that we do is from a West African elder. And he said, in the end, we will only preserve what we love. We will only love what we understand. We will only understand what we are taught. And so giving people access is an opportunity to teach and to create that love for what we're all trying to preserve.
Thanks. Thanks for that. So another issue that I wanted to bring to your attention, and I think this is a first for OWEB. We have a property that we hold an easement on that has easement violations with it. And so we are in the very, very early stages of discussions with our legal counsel about how to proceed in this place of violations. We just haven't dealt with this before. And so I'll be bringing more to you later, but just know uncharted territory, and we're going to try and keep it from getting messy. But it has the potential to get a little bit messy. So that one's out there. And then the final one I would bring to your attention is we're working through a land acquisition in a Fip. This is the John Day Fip. It's proposed an acquisition of a property in Grant County. And we've asked for some additional outreach with the local community there. And so the Land Trust is doing that work and really trying to bring the local community along and understanding what the values are that they're bringing forward, what their hopes are for that property, et cetera. So extra work is going in there. I would mention to you, and we talked about it a little bit yesterday, and you'll get more of it at the end of today, is our agency organization structure and budget. And so Stephanie and I and the exec team, we've spent a lot of time the last several months looking at where we're at in terms of our budget, looking at our organization structure that was really shrunk down to deal with the economic downturn in 2020. And we're in a very different place today. And so we've begun conversations with leadership around how we might begin to resize and restructure the agency going forward. I would mention to you that I've been really open with our entire staff around this, because anytime you talk about organizational structure changes, bigger or smaller, people get really, really nervous. And so I've held several open office hours virtual just to open it up so that the staff can ask questions and kind of follow the logic train that we're on and thinking about how we build a structure that's sustainable for OWEB to meet the growing needs that are coming at us. And then on the fun side of my job, just a few things. I've had the opportunity to get out and do a couple of field trips during the last quarter. Mid-March, I was in the Prineville and Sisters with the Deschutes Partnership, looking at projects that they were doing. And I've heard about the Waichus Creek projects for years, and I had never seen it. And I got to see all of the wonderful work that's going on in Waichus. So that was really exciting. Stephanie participated in a tour with Mark Labhart that he spoke to yesterday with federal officials, and also Katie Duzek from our staff in Tillamook. And then finally, a couple weeks ago, I participated in a tour on the North Clackamas with Senator Merkley. And the North Clackamas Partnership is looking to try and obtain funding for the removal of Kellogg Dam, which is a long-standing structure that not only has issues with the creek, but also with the road going through Milwaukee because they're built together. And so this is an attempt to really go after some federal funding and bring attention to the need to open up that stream space. So I'm going to pause there and see if you have any questions before we move on. Barbara.
So the John Day Fip, doing more community outreach. I'm trying to understand that as far as that the community's not seeing the benefit.
Thanks. So drawing upon my past life and a board meeting that was held in that community, I remember a conversation and a local panel that talked to us at the time around conservation easements and acquisitions in their community and how the community had been affected by it. And one of the things that struck me during that conversation was the need for outreach and to really bring people along so that they understand what's going on in their local area. When I saw the list of people that we had on our public notice for the hearing, it was pretty small. And so I actually had forwarded that on to some additional individuals. And with that, it created more interest and some more questions. So that additional outreach has led to the Land Trust has had been before the county court to talk through the project, you know, and to bring people along so that they understood what was going on there. I think there are some more questions that are still being answered, but we've just kind of slowed the process a little bit so that there's more community engagement with that local community. I think what we heard in the public hearing, and Eric Williams, you can help me with this is an important place for conservation that we're talking about. But there were some questions around some things in the application, and there were questions around local knowledge about it happening and what it meant to their community.
Yeah, I think you summarized it well, Lisa. Eric Williams for the record. And I think that there were some members of the community that had a longstanding relationship with that property. And as Lisa mentioned, there isn't an argument with the goal, you know, the goal of restoring this headwater meadow system in the headwaters of the John Day, but really more around engagement and process. And so that's what the Land Trust is following up with to talk through, you know, their plans and visions, which of course are conceptual at this point because they just recently acquired the property. And that engagement, I think, will help inform their approach going forward as they develop the restoration plans, develop the management plans for the property.
Okay,
and I would just
quick follow-up. Oops. Quick follow-up. Is the full grant available to the public to read?
It is.
Okay, thank you. I never knew that.
And I would just add that this series of conversations has caused us at OWEB to take a pause and look at what we have in our application, the type of questions that we're asking around engagement, and how we encourage that community engagement as we work through these processes. Jamie.
Two quick comments. One is you mentioned around this and where there's non-compliance, there may be some issues that are coming up that we're going to hear about. I do want to say that in my view, criticism is not failure, and to be really clear about that. So, you know, if we're doing the right thing, collaboration is key to OWEB's work and part of our great success. And, you know, at times if there are difficult conversations we have to have, just to say from my point of view, if we're moving forward in the right direction and doing the right thing, don't fear criticism from my perspective. So I just want to support that sense. Have staff feel that sense of support, at least for myself. And then also to your comments about building for the needs of the future. We talked about this a lot yesterday, and a lot of questions came up from board members. I just want you to know that if you're having conversations with folks at the state, at the federal level, and you're needing to be asking for some of these additional resources so we can be supporting our team, if you need something from the board, I'm happy to make that motion. But otherwise, you know, I think we heard a lot from board members, and so I unless someone wants to speak up, I think you can know that you've got the confidence of the board, and you can carry that forward in your conversations as well.
Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate that. Okay. Chair Boyer, I think we may have a quick update around Fips. And thank you for allowing me the extra time. I wanted you to have a good sense of some of the things that we were working on and what we've been doing since we met the last time.
So
Okay.
are you giving, Eric Hartstein's doing the FIP, correct?
Yes, please.
Okay, sorry. I took that away from you, Liza Jane. I'm sorry.
I saw that, Barbara. You just go ahead. Go ahead with that.
Well, good morning, co-chairs, members of the board. For the record, Eric Hartstein, Board and Legislative Policy Coordinator, and I will provide a really brief update on the 2021-2023 Focus Investment Partnership, or FIP, grant program solicitation. So for this biennium's FIP solicitation, OWEB has received 11 FIP proposals, which cover all 7 of the board adopted ecological priorities and request nearly $100 million over 3 biennia. And I want to acknowledge that all the partnerships that submitted these proposals, as they obviously put in a great deal of work into developing their application materials, and it really shows in the quality of the proposals that were submitted. So far this spring, we have completed 2 technical review sessions with 2 separate expert review panels. And the first panel, expert review panel, focused on the capacity of the partnerships that have applied to implement their proposed initiative. And this included an evaluation of the ability of partnerships to engage their community, catalyze additional investments, and the composition and performance of the partnership. The second expert review team looked at the proposals from an ecological perspective, focusing on the extent to which the proposed initiative would make progress toward ecological outcomes, their ability to track progress towards meeting those outcomes, the scientific basis and planning tools that supported the initiative, and how well the proposed allocation of grant types would support achieving the proposed ecological outcomes. And we'll want to give accolades to the folks that we have had on the expert review panels, as they read through many pages of often highly complex information in the proposals, and then engaged in some really robust discussions during the review team meetings. The expert review teams have provided ratings for each of the proposals on the FIP evaluation criteria, and staff are currently documenting these ratings and capturing the strengths and concerns that were expressed during the review team meetings. And this will be informal evaluations, which will be provided to the OWEB grants committee and to the applicants in advance of the June 14th and June 15th committee meeting. So at that meeting, the committee will be interviewing representatives from each of the partnerships on the first day, and then deliberating on recommendations to the full board on the second day of the committee meeting. And these recommendations will come in the form of a ranking for each of the proposals for the full board to consider at your July 26th and 27th meeting, where the new FIP funding awards for this biennium will be made. So I'll stop there and see if there are any questions. Okay, seeing none, we thank you, and we look forward to a further discussion with the full board in July.
Thank you, Eric. All right. To get us back on track as far as co-chairs. Sorry, Liza Jane. Renee, you are up. We're on item agenda K.
Thanks, Barbara. Good morning, co-chairs, members of the board. For the record, Renee Davis, Fire, Klamath, and Drought Programs Manager. So I'll be walking you through agenda item K, which is on page 28 of your ebook. I will try to be succinct, but I do want to flag that in addition to doing a providing an update of the status for various post-fire recovery grant offerings that the agency is administering. I do want to spend a bit of time walking you through attachment A to the staff report to give you a sense of the parts and pieces, as Lisa says, of what it takes to develop and stand up new grant offerings, since there have been many in recent months. So by way of brief background in terms of the post-fire recovery funding, if you recall, in October of 2020, the board did provide up to $1 million in funding for immediate post-fire recovery activities following the Labor Day 2020 fires. In parallel to that process, the state's disaster recovery plan was activated for the first time, and OWEB, along with Departments of Forestry and Environmental Quality, was tasked with co-convening the Natural and Cultural Resources Recovery Task Force to take a broad look at the natural resources and cultural resources impacts from the 2020 fires, help really summarize what those impacts were, and then propose priority actions related to natural and cultural resources recovery. So as part of the task force process, we developed a 2-year funding estimate for what priority recovery actions would require by way of monetary resources that totaled $86 million during the 2021 legislative session. The legislature did make investments in a whole host of post-fire recovery actions, not only focused on natural and cultural resources recovery, but they did invest $26 million in NCR recovery following the 2020 fires. Some of that funding did come to OWEB. So back in July of 21, when you all were adopting the spending plan for this biennium, you took 2 actions related to post-fire recovery. One, you incorporated $19.75 million in general fund resources, the first time that the agency had received general fund for on-the-ground activities to address post-fire recovery needs in the 2020 fire-impacted areas. Also, as part of the governor's priorities line item within the spending plan, you did provide $300,000 in the event that some of that quick turnaround immediate response funding was needed for activities depending on the impacts from the 2021 and 2022 fire seasons. One correction, the staff report references $350,000. That was my mistake. It was actually $300,000 for the immediate fire response grants. So currently we are administering 4 different post-fire recovery grant offerings, grant programs. So I'll describe those to you and give you status updates on each of them. 3 of those are supported with that general fund funding that I mentioned. So that is a little bit different and has had some additional considerations beyond our traditional Measure 76, PCSRF, et cetera, funded granting. So 2 of the general fund supported offerings I'll describe together initially because they have a lot of the same components and expectations. So the general fund funding is focused on soil stabilization and helping to address water quality impacts that we would see following the 2020 fires. And that could be water quality impacts to drinking water supply, source water areas, and aquatic habitats. The legislature gave us 2 paths to do that. One is through riparian and upland replanting, reseeding, restoration activities. The second is through floodplain reconnection and restoration activities. Both of those can help address those water quality impacts. On the floodplain side, it also could help address some post-fire flood risks that could increase following the substantial scale of the 2020 fires. So last fall, we developed 2 grant programs, including separate grant applications, program guidance, et cetera, for those 2 general funded programs. We opened the first grant cycle in mid-November. That closed end of January of this year. We'll have a second cycle. It's currently open and underway. Opened April 1st, we'll close May 31st. And if funding remains, we'll have a third cycle for each of those 2 offerings in the August timeframe. So I'll talk a little bit about where we are in terms of each of those offerings and what we have seen come in and what we expect in the coming cycle. So for the replanting, the upland and riparian replanting offering, we received 3 grant applications following the first grant cycle, totaling about $1 million overall. One of those applications is in the process of being revised for funding that focuses on the North Santiam area in the Beachy Creek fire footprint that will ultimately result in about a $200,000 grant award. The next 2 applications for both the Bratton Fire area over near Paisley and also the White River Fire area up in North Central Oregon will be coming back in or in the spring cycle with resubmissions for those applications. So you may be hearing these numbers thinking, that's not very many applications that came in the door. What's happening here? So well before we opened the fire offerings in mid-November, from conversations with local partners, we recognized that the first two cycles, or the first cycle for each of those offerings, would be fairly slim in terms of applications coming in for a number of reasons. One is a lot of funding came down in parallel in terms of helping to address some of those post-fire impacts. So our offering came at a time when local partners were also seeing offerings from FEMA, Department of Forestry, and others. And frankly, they recognized OWEB has multiple cycles. We're going to hold until spring and focus on some of these other opportunities, given the limited capacity. Frankly, also second, in some fire areas, landowners were not quite ready to tackle natural resources recovery when they were still facing some very real impacts of cleanup and rebuilding on their properties. So just needed a little bit more time for local partners to work with them. And the third piece I would mention, and this is not consistent across all fire areas, but we have seen some organizational capacity challenges in terms of local partners who would apply to these programs. And I think some of that is just remnants of COVID, but then also we have seen some turnover in terms of local staff in our partner organizations. So that's something that we'll probably need to watch not only in the fire offerings, but across our grant programs. So all that to say, we do expect for the spring cycle to receive replanting applications from up to 9 different fire areas, but been in communications with a lot of local partners. So definitely seeing a lot more capacity in terms of folks' ability to come in and apply for this new offering. So in terms of the floodplain offering, we did receive 2 grant applications totaling just over $3 million. One of those we have an executed grant agreement for. That was from the Indian Creek Fire area over in Malheur County. Nearly $175,000 project. There's a second application from the Malala watershed within the Beachy Creek Fire area. It's currently undergoing revisions. We're waiting to see what the final budget total will be for that, but we'll review that revised application when it comes in and then award funding. In terms of the spring cycle for floodplain post-fire recovery, we're expecting applications from up to 5 of the fire areas. So we'll keep you posted about how those proceed. And then for both offerings, depending on what funding remains, we may utilize a summer cycle for that. So the third component of the legislative funding was a direct allocation to Eugene Water and Electric Board, EWEB, for the Holiday Farm Fire area. So this specific allocation for EWEB included the ability for EWEB and the local partners to carry out both restoration and potentially targeted acquisition, land acquisition work to help address the same water quality needs, but with that specific allocation for that fire footprint. So we currently are in the midst of reviewing a $3 million restoration application from EWEB and partners with such as the Mackenzie Watershed Council. And we've been working closely with EWEB and Mackenzie River Trust, who they're partnering with on the land acquisition component of this work. Hopefully in the next few weeks, we'll be opening a grant cycle for 1 or more land acquisition projects to come in for the EWEB funding. So by my calculation, hopefully by late spring across these 3 general fund supported programs, we'll have about $4 million in awarded funding. And then we'll continue to keep an eye on what funding is available for a potential summer cycle. So now I'll transition briefly over to the governor's priorities line item. So again, the board made funding available for immediate fire response activities such as mulching, erosion control, technical design in terms of helping to develop restoration plans post-fire, some reseeding work for the 2021 and 2022 fire seasons. So for the 21 fire season, there were 4 eligible fires. 2 of those fires, Bootleg and Cougar Peak, have executed grant agreements and are in the midst of restoration work on the ground. 2 other fires, Elbow Creek and also Skyline Ridge, decided the fit for this program wasn't really good given the on the ground impacts and the actions that they were seeing as being needed in their location. So ultimately, there still remains in that line item $175,000 that we will potentially utilized depending on the impacts of the 2022 fire season. One piece that I would mention that Stephanie referenced yesterday as part of short session, we did receive $5 million in additional general fund to support 2021 post-fire recovery. So we'll be working closely with those local partners in the 21 fire footprints to, one, help them to become familiar with the post-fire program after we develop it, and then to work through the review and award process for those grants. So I'll stop there, see if folks have any questions before I briefly jump over to attachment A.
Liza Jane's got a question.
Quickly, Renee, thank you. This is Liza Jane for the record. I heard you mention capacity, and I think I heard that was on watershed, kind of grant writing, this getting things underway. Are you hearing any concerns about being able to hire people to implement these projects, getting the work done, and how should we expect that to roll forward or become a barrier?
Thanks for that question, Liza Jane. For the record, Renee Davis. Yes, we have heard about some challenges just in terms of, for example, restoration crews, having access to planting crews. So one additional piece of the legislative funding that was provided was to Department of Forestry for nursery and seedling capacity work. And so one component of that funding is work with a whole host of folks, OSU Extension, Sustainable Northwest, local partners, American Forest, to really ensure that we're not overlooking this issue of workforce as it relates to actually getting these projects on the ground. So I'm not suggesting that that will necessarily solve that issue, but this is definitely on folks' radars to think, are there some ways that we can do some kind of bulk contracting so that there could be, I think, sufficient volume there that folks are able to secure some of those crews. The reality, though, is it is not an employer's market currently. So I think we will continue to face that. I'm happy to come back. I'll continue to track that and in subsequent updates, if there are specific ideas in terms of board action or investments that could be helpful, I'm happy to track those and bring those back to you.
Thank you. I know in agriculture, there's a bit of a trend now to deal with capacity in co-oping, back to the barn raising kind of concept where we can all get together and get this work done, then we can get together and get this work done. And that might be also part of the solution as we do this restoration work. Thanks, Renee.
Thank you. Okay, so in the interest of time, since I see Chris has patched in, I do want to move us over to attachment A briefly. The post-fire recovery grants have given us a great example of what it takes to stand up a new program. We're in the midst of doing that now with 6 drought relief programs. So this is a very complex and busy schematic. It's a fantastic schematic in terms of really capturing the steps in the process. Huge thanks to Linda for putting this together. There are a few pieces I just wanted to highlight for you all. I would say generally the board typically interfaces with the blue columns within this particular schematic, so columns 3 through 5. There are, however, a lot of steps before and after that I just wanted to give you a glimpse into. So for columns 1 and 2, this is really where the rubber meets the road with these new programs. So starting with developing program guidance with both post-fire recovery and drought relief, we've had to be really mindful of legislative intent to help really set the rules of the road for these new offerings. These are different from our traditional Measure 76 offerings, and so making sure that that's really clear for folks. We then will go into building online applications. That's one particular task within this column, but there's a lot to that, from making sure you have clear application questions or providing helpful guidance, doing internal and external testing. So lots of the pieces that Max and Amy and Heidi and Teresa are working on right now, there's a lot underneath that item. Working with Department of Justice to make sure we have appropriate grant agreement templates. All of these steps that enable us to get money out the door take some time and definitely need to be an important part of the process when we're standing up new programs. convening the right technical reviewers for these processes and being mindful of how much we're pulling on some of our subject matter experts within other agencies is an important component to it. And then with any new program, because these do have different nuances, making sure we have really solid guidance material, frequently asked questions. We're offering webinars so folks understand the similarities and differences if they're used to a certain type of OWEB offering, to really help them to bring in the strongest possible applications given the focus of particular offerings. So just wanted to flag that piece. On the second and third columns, I guess I would just say it really does take a village to stand up a new grant offering. So we have funded positions such as some of the folks who you met this morning, but it also takes time from our fiscal staff, our administrative staff, our IT staff to help make sure that all of the steps in the process are flowing smoothly. And so I think to Lisa's point of making sure that the agency is staffed in a way that really does reconcile and align with the demand and need out there is critically important. It sounds like a question came up in terms of when we look at budgets, just maybe from Liza Jane yesterday, just a quick flag starting in that third column during application review, we start looking at budgets then and continue to work with applicants to refine and correct budgets as needed if something's in the wrong category. So we definitely are paying close attention to the budgeting piece. And then in that section, in kind of the blue section of this schematic, this is where you all are most familiar with things, but there are some nuances with the general fund programs, just as an example. So we go through the same review process, deliberation, recommendation process, but with the case of emergency programs, we have to balance a solid and accountable technical review with trying to get these dollars out the door as quickly as possible to folks on the ground who really are facing needs. So it's that balance of ensuring we're transparent and accountable while being as responsive as we possibly can. And then I would say column 6 through 8, this is again where there's a lot of meat here and a lot of it is behind the scenes, but it definitely takes a significant amount of staff time and attention to make sure that we have grant agreements in place that are clear and understandable to applicants. We're staying in communication with them about progress with implementation. In the case of the general fund programs, quarterly reporting so we can keep the legislature, the governor's office updated. So there is a lot to this part of it to make sure that we do have successful and effective on the ground implementation, and we're there to help problem solve and troubleshoot with our grantees. So again, thanks to Linda for putting this together. Hopefully it gives you a glimpse into what our staff do, whether they're working on open solicitation or FIP or now some of these general fund programs. And yeah, happy to answer any questions you have, just being mindful of time since Chris is here with us.
All right, any questions for Renee? Not seeing any. I just have one comment. This schematic is so cool. I really like it. Yeah, that's a great visual. So thank you. So I know, Chris, are you okay if we take a 10-minute break?
Yes, ma'am, of course.
Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, let's get back here at 11:05, please.
Well, come on back, everybody. Show me your smiling faces. This is Liza Jane, and I am really looking forward to our next section here for a virtual tour with Denise and Chris from the Crooked River Watershed Council. So thank you for your patience on giving us a break there, so we all came back fresh and ready. And I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Liza Jane. Good morning, OWEB board. For the record, Denise Hoffert, Partnerships Coordinator. And I am here to introduce the Opal Springs project and the Executive Director of the Crooked River Watershed Council, Chris Gannon. And I just want to start by acknowledging that I'm only introducing this project. The work to shepherd it through OWEB's grant program and support the Crooked River Watershed Council in taking this project from idea to implementation was done by Andrew Dutterer. The Opal Springs project is in OWEB's Region 4. The project received $2.8 million in OWEB investment via the Deschutes Focused Investment Partnership Program to support engineering, design, and construction work. This large OWEB investment was made to address what was the second highest priority fish passage barrier on the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife's 2013 statewide fish passage priority list. The on-the-ground lead for coordinating this high priority fish passage project is Chris Gannon. Chris has been the executive director for the Crooked River Watershed Council for 11 years. In addition to his work at the council, he is also a board member for the network of Oregon Watershed Councils, and he and his wife own a day spa in Madras. And I forgot to ask Chris if he is able to continue operating a nonprofit because he has a day spa. So that could be the secret to keeping more people running the helm of watershed councils around the state is day spa access. Leading the fish passage work at Opal Springs was not Chris's first high-profile fish passage project on the Crooked River. I first met him when I was with American Rivers during the removal of the Stearns Dam back in 2013. With several fish passage projects planned and underway in the Crooked River, I look forward to continuing to support the council in their work to improve aquatic habitat conditions in Central Oregon. And I will turn the time over to Chris. And Chris and I have practiced several times now on the screen share in Zoom. And so we will hope that that works smoothly for him today.
Well, thank you very much, Denise. Good morning, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to present this project to you. It's a very high profile, very important project for our watershed. If I could, Chair McAllister and Chair Boyer, I would like to dedicate this presentation to Andrew Dutterer. He was a tremendous help to us, always supported our work, and in particular was very, very helpful on this project. If time allows, I do have a short 4-minute time-lapse video I'd like to show at the very end. And if it's okay with you, I'd also like to ask you to please hold your questions until the very end after that short video. Thank you very much. And with that, we will get this underway. So I wanted to start with maybe a little bit of background on the district itself. Opal Springs is owned by the Deschutes Valley Water District. They were formed formally in 1919. So they just had their 100-year anniversary 3 years ago. It's really a water utility more than anything else. They do happen to also own a hydroelectric facility, rather small scale. And they've been really, really a good partner in this project. For the presentation this morning, I thought I would touch on these 6 items. Really, the introduction's pretty much behind us now. So if I could, I'll move into project history. This is probably
Chris,
going, I'm sorry?
We're not seeing your screen.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
No worries.
The
green button.
Yeah. Most important part of this, isn't it? How's that? Are we seeing anything now?
No.
Hold on a sec. Oh my gosh, this is what we did not want to happen, Denise, right? Really apologize.
That's okay. Are you happen to be running dual monitors?
No, I have one monitor only here. I have the share screen button at the bottom, and when I hit it, I think I'm in share screen mode.
There you go. Now you
Okay,
got it.
I really apologize. This is the first slide, but it's not very exciting. So let me just move right past that. These are the 6 items I told you we would sort of touch on today in the presentation. And I talked a little bit about the project history. So let me move into what I think is probably the most boring slide of them all today. And it'll take a little bit of reading. But I would say that the background on this project and the history really was prompted by a FERC relicensing project at a large hydro complex below Opal Springs on the Crooked River called Pelton Round Butte project. The need for passage at Opal really was inspired by the licensing at that FERC facility, and really kind of put pressure on the next barrier upstream. And as Denise mentioned, it was the 2nd ranked priority barrier by ODF&W. I think what really galvanized this project was the settlement agreement that was completed in 2011. The settlement agreement allowed for many parties, environmental type interests primarily, to come together with the project owner, Deschutes Valley Water District, and really come to an agreement on what was going to happen at the project, what the funding would be, what some of the project elements would cover, what some of the kind of goals and objectives were for the project. And it was really critical because having that settlement agreement in place allowed the district to safely reopen their FERC license. And as I discussed with Denise, that is a very rare event in FERC world. Most owners of hydroelectric facilities do not voluntarily open their license. They typically wait until the current license expires before they take action. This license is set to expire in 2032, about 10 years from now. So once the settlement agreement was in place, that really prompted the funding needs and potential partners to kind of line up and kind of commit to the project. The design for the project was completed in 2015, supported by OWEB. Construction started in May 2018 after the amended FERC license was issued and funding was really kind of secured and in place. The project was completed about 18 months later, November 19th of 2019, and the first steel had actually passed through the project less than 12 hours later on the early morning of November 20th. So the first step you take when you put together one of these projects is you've got to clear the site. You've got to make sort of level and safe working spaces around the project site. So this stuff shows sort of some of that activity. Really to prevent issues at the intake structure of the diversion dam, we also needed to put down some articulated concrete blocks, and we used a diver to lay those in front of the intake on the bottom of the Crooked River, and that was done to stabilize the bottom of the river right in front of the intake so that you didn't create more sort of scour as you move the whole river over to that side of the channel. Controlling water is one of the most important features in a project like this. And when you start to control water and move water around, you typically dewater some parts of the river. And in this case, that requires a lot of active fish salvage. And I will say on the side that Trout Unlimited and ODF&W are perfectly suited partners for this kind of activity. They do it all the time. They know how to organize volunteer groups, and they're very, very good at fish salvage. So we were really benefited from having their participation in the project. The site is at the bottom of an 800-foot canyon. It's lined with very steep basalt cliffs. It's a narrow kind of work site. I think it's probably a little over 300 feet across on the bottom. About 200 feet is probably the river. So you've got about 100 feet of workspace primarily. Knowing that this was a very important project to the state, we thought we would really benefit by documenting the project from front to back, start to completion. And so we did several things. We had a series of videos shot. We also deployed 4 time-lapse cameras around the project site for the duration of the project. I will show you some images of those, but before we leave this slide, let me point out, if you can see my pointer, these are those articulated concrete block mats in front of the intake that feeds the penstock, runs about 150 feet down to the actual hydropower facility, which is a little lower on river left downriver. This is one of the 4 cameras we deployed. Safety was paramount in this project, given the hazards of the site. There's only one road in, access road. It's a single lane. It's very steep. So this particular camera was set up on a cliff line or small bench about 200 feet above the river level. This is Mark Peterson with a harness and a lead rope secured back to a boulder to ensure he doesn't go off the edge of the cliff. The little basket you see here is a creative way to keep anything from falling out of the camera when you have to go out once a month and change the batteries and the storage card for those images. Here's an early project. This is probably late May of 2018 when the project was really just starting. In this image, you can see the dewatered part of the diversion pool. This is the primary crooked river running from the left to right or sort of upstream this way down towards the penstocks and the intake. In this case, they're coffering off or sort of dewatering sections and putting in bulk bags to ensure they have a dry, safe work area. This is the same time period roughly, looking across from River Right across the project. And I will note these large bladder bags that are filled with water that act as cofferdams, sort of have replaced traditional cofferdams. They're a little easier to move around. And with a soft bottom like we have here versus a rocky bottom, these work really, really well to protect workers and create dry spaces for work. This is a photo of some of that work. This is hanging the iron and rebar that then has forms put up around them. You never really see the rebar again. It gets encased in concrete. In this image, you'll also see the bladder bag still functioning to basically coffer off this side of the river. And you'll note here that this is the new dam sill or foundation of the diversion dam. It's a 2-foot raise was part of the project, sort of a pool raise and dam raise. I did want to tell you that moving concrete down that steep single lane road was a bit of a trick. There were 6 contractors that were invited to come look at the site, concrete contractors, and only one of them actually submitted a bid after touring the site. I think a lot of them got sort of cold feet around the dangers and hazards of moving full trucks down this road. So I have a very short video here to show you. It just runs a few seconds, but it's meant to show you that it was imperative to use large dump trucks to kind of brake assist and control these loaded concrete trucks down the steep road. So this was really meant to ensure that none of the loaded concrete trucks sort of lost their brakes or got moving too fast down this very steep road, kind of losing control and perhaps going sort of off the edge of the, oops, beg your pardon, off the edge of the cliff. This is the next video or the next shot I wanted to show you. This is just a close-up of some of that ironwork and rebar construction. The dam, or the ladder rather, is about 12 to 15 feet deep, basically the vaults or the concrete walls that surround the ladder. Here's sort of a view looking up the upper portion of the ladder when they're sort of, again, hanging the iron and before the concrete arrives to seal these in encased concrete. Here's a view from across the river. So this is on the opposite side of the ladder, looking directly at the bottom end of the ladder. And in fact, this is the entrance to the ladder that the fish would use coming upriver to access the ladder. The ladder is about 300 feet long and requires a switchback down in this area to navigate that lift. Here's a little bit of a closer shot taken from one of the time-lapse cameras, shows the intake to the hydro project. It also shows, if your eyes are really good, you can see this new concrete about 2-foot lift right along here, because of course, when you lift the sill that lifts the dam 2 feet, you also have to account for that and transfer that same elevation gain to your parapets around the intake structure. So this image is also showing the completed attraction flow chute. The part of the ladder, the upper part of the ladder is already in place. This is where the fish exit back into the pool, back into the river. And really all that's left is sort of the bottom end of the ladder in this stage. Here is a picture of the switchback that I mentioned a moment ago. The entrance is kind of off the screen to the right here, but this is a key component in terms of moving the fish up this very long about 25-foot lift or elevation gain that they have to navigate through the ladder. Once the project was completed in about mid-November of 19, we did have an interagency kind of fish agencies join us for a project tour. So we had representatives from ODF&W, U.S. Marine Fish, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and they really were there to kind of do a walkthrough of the project to ensure that all of the criteria, design criteria elements were met, sort of a punch list kind of approach. So it was about half a day. And in this photo, excuse me, we are testing the attraction flow chute, which is really this piece. The fish don't use this to go upriver, they use the ladder, but it is in place to create an attraction flow at the face or the entrance to the ladder so that fish can find that entry point. A little bit of work to do on the ladder in this stage. There's some more catwalks that need to be done. And in fact, on this tour, we were able, before watering, we were able to walk through the ladder itself and sort of look at sort of functionality of the ladder. I will note that some of these holes that you see are dark spots. One of the punch list items included coming back and sanding these down a little bit smoother so that fish didn't lose scales or get impinged on sharp points. The right side of this image shows the ladder looking down inside the ladder vault or the ladder walls. And this is really truly the first water through the ladder at that stage. Here's a two-paired shot of the traction flow chute from above. We're basically testing different water flows through the chute. The actual attraction flow chute is this skinny little line of water that creates the attraction for fish to find that entrance to the ladder. The larger chute really is more for overflow purposes. And in some cases, smolts, outgoing smolts might use this chute to get downriver on their way to the ocean. The photo on the right shows sort of testing the kind of what we thought were the highest volumes we might ever push through the attraction flow chute. I think at these volumes, fish really, there's too much turbulence in front of the entrance to the ladder. They probably get pushed away from the ladder. So this is not something that's sort of operational normally. What you have on the left side of the screen is really what constitutes or represents more the standard operation of the ladder. Here's an overhead shot from the bench, the main bench on the canyon bench on the way out. And it basically shows all the progress at the site, including the switchback and the last of the vaults and ladder rungs or steps that still need to be covered with a catwalk. This is a really fun photo. This was taken in December of 19, a little bit after the project really went live. And we're touring the project with OWEB staff. Here's Greg Cianella, and in the middle is Andrew Dutterer. Mark Peterson, who works with us here at the council, is kind of showing them the project. So really fun day. It was really glorious to have that much sunshine in December as well. This is a shot really from camera 4, that time lapse camera I showed you earlier where we were changing the film and the batteries. And this is really truly the completed project in its entirety. So all the catwalks are in place, the traction flow chute is working, fish are actually able to move up the ladder. This was taken on that same day that we had the OWEB staff tour. This is kind of post-project information I wanted to share. I need to spend a couple of minutes on this slide to walk you through it because there's a lot of information here. First and foremost, on the left side of this chart are all the different species of fish that have used the ladder since it was open in 2019. Across the top here, you have time periods. They're not equal. So this first time period is about 6 months. The second period, or the middle column, is about 1 full year. And the third column to the right is about 6 months as well. I say that because when you go to compare these numbers through time, you might get a little confused as to why some of the numbers aren't sort of flowing with the right time element. So the times are not equal. I think it's important to note that in this final period, the third column to the right, it appears that the fish numbers in some cases for some species have gone down. And I would note that we were in a sort of second year of a drought cycle that probably had some impact on how many fish could move up the ladder. I'd like to come back to this if there are any questions, because I think there could be, but I do want to charge ahead if I could. I have 2 short videos to show you that are taken from the project. This is from the Vaki river watcher system that's installed inside the ladder chute or vault. And it's sort of triggered by motion. So there's a motion detect element. And when a fish comes through the ladder, it's kind of like sound stage, the lights come on and the stage is lit up and we're expecting a fish to come by, and they're all taking video shots of these fish. And that's how we generated the table and the fish numbers that I showed you just before. So this is actually the very first steelhead that moved through the ladder. And again, note the date in the upper right-hand side. This is one day after the ladder went live, fully operational, and it was at 4:30 in the morning. This is the first steelhead that used the ladder. With that, I will move on. Let's see. Sorry for that. This is the first, I'm not the first, I beg your pardon. This is one of the recent Chinook, about a year ago, roughly, one of the large spring Chinook that moved to the ladder. So I only wanted to show these two species because they are the target species of this reintroduction effort in the Crooked River. In terms of post-project fact sheet, I would let you know that there were lots and lots of yards of concrete, over 200 loaded trucks to get this amount of concrete down to the site. There were over 5 miles of rebar or iron used within the project, the ladder and the kind of the new sill for the dam raise. The total construction costs, if you look at just construction, were a little over 12 million. But when you include overall total project costs since inception in 2001, when basically the district was beginning the process of visiting with FERC and getting engineers involved in preliminary designs, the total is actually a couple $1 million more. Of this total, a little over 14 million, OWEB's total contribution is as Denise mentioned earlier, 2.7, almost $2.8 million. It does represent OWEB's share about 20% roughly of the total project costs since 2001. Most of the project costs were not associated with 2001 or those early years, but rather the steam and the costs really picked up probably around 2010-ish, 2009. In terms of what the project sort of additional project outcomes, it was awarded the Division of State Lands and Oregon Stream Project of the Year for 2019. I mentioned the time-lapse videos and some video series that we shot at the project. They're available on a YouTube channel that the council owns. The full-length video can be found at this link here. And then I will also note that the full-length film was showcased at the 2021 River Restoration Northwest Film Festival, and it was shown again at the conference in 2022, just a couple of months ago, actually. In terms of project partners, there were several. Obviously, they're listed here. I'll let you read through them. Not listed here is the Deschutes Valley Water District, the owner and kind of key to the whole project. And who else is missing is the general contractor, RSCI out of Boise, who really was fantastic to work with and did really a fabulous job in working with us to get the film, for example, to get the film in place. They allowed us to get up close, and while they were working, they just had a few sort of limits on how close we could get to some of the active work. Eric Hartstein asked me to talk a little bit about future work for the Crooked now that the Opal Springs project is kind of completed and we're off that, that ranked list for high priority barriers. It's not a list you really want to be on. And so we're happy to be off that list now, but it does shift our gears a little bit. We do have a fish screening project that was funded with some of our last focused investment partnership funds. And it's a screening project that will screen private diversions all the way through the kind of geographic area that makes up the Fips. So there are about 45 individual pump sites that all need screens. In terms of habitat improvements, I say here that we're just starting at scale. We have been doing habitat work for quite a while, but in terms of real meaningful large-scale habitat, I think there's still a lot of work in front of us. That was intentional because, as you can probably surmise, it makes no sense to get a lot of habitat improvements done if you can't get fish access to those sites. So obviously the biggest priority was Opal Springs, and following the completion of that project, we can move and adjust our focus to active habitat improvements and restoration. Water quality, I will let you know, is a big issue and has been for a long time in the Crooked. we are collecting water quality data. We're planning on launching a study with USGS on nitrogen isotopes, probably this fall and into the next couple of years. We'd like to figure out with USGS help exactly what the origination source is for those nitrogen compounds that are moving into the system and creating a lot of water quality impacts. We also constantly work on juniper in the uplands of the watershed. It's a 3 million acre watershed, so plenty of juniper to reduce. It's always active because it really creates problems for water quantity, water quality, and really is not good for native grasslands. They tend to get crowded out by juniper when they hit certain densities per acre. We're also starting to partner with Oregon Beaver Works on a sort of introduction and sustainability of beaver in our area. There were thousands, literally tens of thousands of beaver in the watershed historically. And at some point, we probably won't get, you know, thousands and thousands back, but we'd like to definitely lean on the beavers for some of the good work that they can do. With that, I am concluding the project, or presentation, but I would like to show you, if we have time, a short video. I say short, I think it's 4-minute runtime. This is a time lapse of the entire project from beginning to end. So some of the still photos I showed you are represented here as well. It does go fast, so please pay close attention. You'll note that there's a seasonal change here, and in this lower right-hand corner, if you note these trees, they will turn a color in the fall.
You have to reshare your screen, remember?
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Give me a second here. I apologize for that. Let me see. How's that? No? Denise, can you see anything yet?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, I apologize. Let me restart this video. It runs for 4 minutes, 30 seconds. I hope we have enough time. And then I'll take questions after that. We can go back and look at anything you'd like to. So I was saying that this is a time lapse from beginning to end. So this is pretty much May of 2018, and we'll conclude kind of December-ish of 2019. You will see one winter or seasonal change in this lower right-hand corner. The trees will change color about 3/4 of the way through the video. So on the front end here, it's really about getting the sill, the dam sill in place with a new concrete foundation, basically that's 2 feet higher than the original. We also had to raise these parapet walls, as I spoke of. This is sort of the springtime when the river flows came up, and they pretty much had to release water over the top of the new sill, at least half the sill. You couldn't run all that water through the penstocks. There's a certain capacity or volume limit for the hydro facility. So as we proceed, you can see more of the sill or the dam foundation being put in place, cofferdams put in, the bladder bags rolled out and filled with water. And then as it moves along, you'll see a lot of scurrying little ant-like creatures, humans moving around really fast to create different project elements. Basically, there's not a whole lot to say. I think this video speaks for itself for the most part. You will notice, if your eyes are really, really good, the seasonal change in terms of just the angles of the sun. I think it's very hard to perceive, but it is occurring, trust me. Here's the rest of the sill being poured. And now about this stage, they're starting to work on the upper end of the fish ladder. And again, the fish ladder is about 300 feet long. So it took quite a bit of time and several stages, you might say, of construction to get the ladder completed. The ladder actually ends all the way down here by this large boulder, kind of center bottom of the image. They use concrete pumper trucks to deliver concrete down inside those vaults. Part of this video coming up fairly soon will show some of the backfilling that has to occur behind those walls to stabilize them. When you go out there today, you do not see a whole lot of these large concrete walls. What you really see is just probably the upper 2 feet. Most of the ladder is actually underground on its conclusion. They did work at night several times. RSCI was very keen on getting this project done as quickly as possible. I think their contract probably created more profit the faster they could go. Again, they were a delight to work with, and I will note very importantly that there were no reportable accidents on this project whatsoever. So now they're starting to fill in the attraction flow chute. That's under construction right through here. The next step will be to extend the ladder from sort of its upper point down around the rock and down to where the fish would enter from the lower river. I may have mentioned that the dam height is about 25, 26 feet from river level below the dam to river level above the dam in the pool. So here they're actually sheltering the concrete with plastic to keep the concrete cure rates intact. They had to use specialized concrete that would cure at rates that would allow the trucks to come from Prineville, the concrete trucks, and not sort of, have the concrete set up too fast. So they had mixed in some additives to the concrete to slow the curing process. When you do that, you've got to protect some of the concrete once it's poured because the cure times have been extended. So in this case, they're excavating around that big boulder that I talked about earlier, sort of as a landmark feature. They've got the attraction flow chute pretty much finished at this point. And now they're going to extend the upper ladder down around. The switchback is about here, and then kind of in front of the boulders where the entrance will end up. So now we're clearly in 2019. This is probably summerish of 2019. They're working frantically to try to stay on schedule and not go through another winter for project construction. The other thing to note here is the sill is completed and the stanchions, the aluminum stanchions are in place that hold up flashboards, wooden flashboards that in a sense create the dam itself. Those flashboards are designed to give way under very, very high flows. So if we had an extreme event in the Crooked River, the flashboards would basically break loose. With that, I will gladly take any questions that you might have. Anyone?
Molly.
I don't really have a question per se. I just want to really appreciate that presentation. I learned so much about the project. Wonderful presentation and super informative. One of the best things about being on the board is being able to see the work that's being done around the state, and we haven't been able to do that as we've been working from home. So this was wonderful. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Molly. Sorry about some of the glitches.
No glitches. It was great. Dan, please.
Hey, Chris, any surprises by the fish numbers? Or was it pretty on target to what you were expecting to see?
Well, it's a good question. I think it was probably pretty much on target. I think if you looked a little bit, we can go back and bring that slide up if you're interested as a group, but if you look closely, a lot of the native fish species and sort of resident species that use that section of the Crooked River maybe arguably were the biggest benefactors. I say that because when you think about a warmer future, under climate change sort of considerations, a lot of those sort of resident fish that hang out right in that lower section of the Crooked can now move volitionally either above or below the project to seek sort of cooler waters and maybe foraging opportunities. So I do note that some of the resident fish, non-targeted fish, non-anadromous fish tend to seem to have the biggest benefit at the moment. We're a little disappointed that more of the anadromous fish aren't using the system, or at least aren't showing up in numbers yet. But again, this project is probably going to live with us for 100 years or so. And I think it's really possible that those numbers, when they come up for the regular sort of reintroduction program everywhere else in the basin, they're surely going to come up in the Crooked River as well.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
Great,
you.
thanks for the work on that.
You bet. Thanks for the support.
Stephanie.
I just wanted to echo what Molly said and thank you, Chris, and thank our staff for working with you and putting together this virtual tour. Just like Molly said, we haven't been able to get out and see projects over the last couple of years, and And we hope that today's presentation really provides an opportunity to see some of the work that we've been supporting and stay connected with our grantees, and just see a couple of years in the life of a grantee as you work to oversee this project. So thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. It reminds me that if there are any questions that come up beyond today, please do get in touch with me. I'd love to try to answer any questions you might have that come up later.
Well, thank you, Chris. And Denise. That was a great presentation. It is so important to us. To all the project partners, the tenacity there, it was quite a time from start to finish, and I know the work continues, so we appreciate that as well. I have a silly question. What will the beavers eat? Is there enough?
So in the Upper Crooked, where the kind of the home of the beavers, you might say, the other end of the watershed, basically, that's a really good question, Chair, because the first thing we're finding is you've got to create the food source for beaver before you can really expect them to arrive in big numbers. We do have beaver dam analogs that we're sort of fiddling with a little bit and getting some of them out on the landscape, but we hesitate to go full bore on installing BDAs, knowing that there's really not technically enough food source. So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg kind of question. We think if we can get more water retained on the landscape, that could promote more vegetation, which then promotes, beaver sort of arriving and setting up shop in those locations. So we're probably gonna have to be kind of patient on how we approach that. But ultimately, we'd like to see somewhere in the neighborhood of a couple thousand beavers active in the upper watershed at some point.
Yeah, I think about your fish that showed up right away because you built it and they came. And, same with the beavers, if you build that, and they'll come. So
that's right.
Thank you so much. I wish we didn't have to move on, but we have just lots more good things today. So appreciate you.
I understand. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we are now in the general public comment period of our agenda. And I have a few people that are signed up. And today's public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. And Vanessa Green with the Network of Oregon Watershed Council, you are up first, please.
Oh, hi, thank you, Chair Boyer and Chair McAllister, and happy Tuesday, OWEB board. Thanks for the time. For the record, my name is Vanessa Green, and I serve as the Executive Director for the Network of Oregon Watershed Councils. I always like to touch in and share some developments with you from the Watershed Council world. And today I want to let you know about our recent Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, or DEI training. We conducted some member surveys in 2020 and 2021, and we wanted to identify where to prioritize our Now-See resources and where we could best support councils in their work and how to best leverage our efforts. So we identified that many councils recognize the importance of DEI training and how it could help reframe and steer their work. And some of the councils, especially the ones in the Willamette Valley, had already participated in various trainings, and they were well on their way. There were other councils, though, especially those in our smaller or more rural communities, who had not yet had the experience, and they were lacking the opportunity or the money or the time or all of the above. So in 2021, we pursued and received a grant opportunity with Meyer Memorial Trust, and the goal was to support broad organizational development for DEI. So we used those funds to engage the Center for Diversity in the Environment. That's a nonprofit that provides a range of DEI leadership development, and we used their Building the Foundation curriculum. And it's designed to build general self-awareness and develop a common language to describe DEI principles and how to recognize the behaviors of inclusion and of systemic racism. And this spring, we conducted the training that funding provided. So it was 3 cohorts of 20 people each. So that's 60 people total, and it was representing about half of our watershed councils. It included staff members and executive directors and board members from all 6 of the regions. And the groups met each morning over a week to engage in this dialogue, and each group met for 20 hours total. And this dedicated time really allowed us the chance to unpack and get to know each other, in a way that is difficult sometimes in pandemic times. So I can say that the training was a meaningful experience for us, and we did a post-survey data. 100% of the people agreed that they developed a deeper understanding as it applies to themselves and their organizations, and then to the environmental movement in general. And most people increased confidence to discuss DEI with their colleagues and felt more ready to begin change processes in their organizations. So I'm really happy with that outcome. One person said there was so much scaffolding that occurred prior to discussing action, and that was really helpful. And for me as a participant, that was helpful as well. So I just wanted to share this update with you guys, the board, so that you know that councils have broadly engaged in a DEI journey. And we all know that this is ongoing and it can be a difficult process. And over the next year, many councils are planning to work together with their organizations and with one another to take a look through their governance documents and their structures and their strategic plans and their projects and their programs and their assessment tools, the whole package, to see how we can measurably and meaningfully engage with our whole communities. So letting you know, because you will likely to see more, you'll be likely to see more evidence of this when you see our OWEB grant proposals. And we hope that these efforts will align well with your own progress and OWEB's progress with DEI. We also wrote additional foundation grants that if they are awarded, they will speed the process along for us by increasing our capacity. So we will be able to coordinate small groups and develop template policies and documents and do further training. And we're really glad for this opportunity afforded through Meyer Memorial Trust, and we're ready for the next steps. So that's my whole update.
Thank you, Vanessa. All right, moving on down, we have kind of a panel for our second public comment. Jan Lee, Kelly Beamer, Vanessa Green, Cynthia Warnock, to talk about the partnership and the Connect training coming up. Kelly, who's organizing how the panel is going to go today?
I can go first, but I'll just switch hats.
Okay.
So you're gonna hear from me twice in a row. Okay,
right.
So good morning again. And I'm still Vanessa Green, Executive Director of the Network of Oregon Watershed Councils. So this time I'm speaking on behalf of the Oregon Conservation Partnership, which includes the Coalition of Oregon Land Trusts and the Oregon Association of Conservation Districts and the Oregon Conservation Education and Assistance Network. And together we represent over 150 conservation organizations across Oregon. We engage in a lot of different projects and conversations, and we always like to provide some kind of an update to the OWEB board. But today I'd like to focus on one of our newer initiatives, which is the affinity groups. We began 4 of these groups in early 2021, and the timing was right because if you recall, we were all stuck in our homes away from each other and really feeling the constraints of our geographic and organizational boundaries. And the purpose of these affinity groups is to provide a platform for sustained, longer-term conversations and collaborations. The groups really fill a different niche than the webinars we provide. Those tend to focus on broad interest topics, and they're different than the conferences, which tend to pull people in a lot of different directions. With the affinity groups, you can really unpack and get to know each other and dive deep on niche topics. So right now we offer 4 affinity groups. Each of them are led by a coordinator, and they have all established learning objectives that guide their discussions. And each group is open to new members. So if you are interested, just pop on over to the ORCP website and get the email address of the coordinator and send them an email, and it's that easy. The first group I'll talk about is the Estuary and Tide Gates group. It's led by Cindy Curtis, who is a project manager for the Coquille Watershed Association. They have been coordinating and adding value with the more formal statewide Tide Gates group, and they have been peer sharing about their ongoing restoration projects, and they have gathered representatives from agencies to talk about implementer needs. And that includes NOAA and Department of State Lands, ODFW, and the Army Corps. Then there's the Journal Club for Aquatic Habitat Restoration, and it's led by Zach Mallon, who is the executive director of the Lower Nehalem Watershed Council. And they follow a journal club format. So one person will closely read and present a selected article and then lead a discussion for the group. And they seek to stay up to date on topics that are relevant to habitat restoration across national and international peer-reviewed publications. They explore techniques for project implementation, and they explore intersections with social and cultural topics. So those guys have a lot of fun. And the pollinators group is led by Anthony Melithopoulos. He is an assistant professor of pollinator health extensions in the Department of Horticulture at Oregon State University. This group discusses the general challenges of creating pollinator habitats, and they focus on the rights of way, working lands, and monarch butterfly conservation. And they have featured presentations by experts from OSU and ODOT and US Fish and Wildlife and others. And this group would especially like to invite more participation from east of the Cascades because the pollinators seem to really like your habitats over there. The Working Lands and Easements group was led by Tori Mills from Colt. She has since left her position, and we will be appointing a new coordinator soon. This group focuses on exploring and leveraging member resources. It has included the OECD Working Lands Guidebook and the Colt Legal Library, safe harbor agreements, and case studies about specific land easements. They also invited experts from NOAA and NRCS and ODFW. In the future, this group plans to take a deeper dive on tools to increase tribal sovereignty on working lands, and they continue discussions on how they can effectively engage with the Oregon Agricultural Heritage Program, especially now that it's been funded. Okay, that's that update.
All right. So each of you are going to speak. Is that what I'm trying? Is that what I'm understanding?
You got it.
Okay. All right. Who's going to go next in that panel?
Cynthia, you ready?
Yeah, I can go next. This is Cynthia Warnock. I am the president of the Oregon Conservation Education Assistance Network, better known as OCEAN. I just want to give an update on Connect Plus. We call it Connect Plus because it also includes our partners this year. We just put out soliciting for abstracts for the conference. Those abstracts are due June 10th, 2022. At this point, there are 8 tracks that we're looking at. Consist of administration, climate, diversity, education and communication, partnership, collaboration, riparian and stream, uplands, forestry, fire, and water. So those are the 8 tracks. And so that has gone out to get some abstracts for Connect. The committee is meeting now about every 2 weeks. And it also consists of our partners too, because this is a partner Connect. So that is all I have for an update on Connect, but it is going forward.
Cynthia, what are the dates?
For Connect?
Yes.
Oh, September 6th through the 8th.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I don't see Jan Lee on here, so I'll say Kelly.
Our dear Jan is recovering from some surgery, so everyone send her healing vibes. Good morning, everyone. For the record, Kelly Beamer. I'm director of the Coalition of Oregon Land Trusts, and it's a pleasure to be here with the Oregon Conservation Partnership today. And just shout out to Chris for that tour. I miss the tours. I miss our togetherness, and so it's a great idea to have that connection back to the land. Yeah, just wanted to also share some updates. The Coalition of Oregon Land Trusts puts on a conference called Land Camp. We use a college campus, and this year we'll be at Linfield College in the beautiful Willamette Valley, June 28th and 29th. It's open to all, and so you can visit the Land Camp website. Our keynotes are pretty fabulous folks. Jillian Joseph, she's founder of the Native Wellness Institute, an incredible Indigenous woman leader here we have in Oregon. Kim Moore-Bailey's coming up from the Bay Area. She's the director of Justice Outside, really focusing on advancing racial justice in the outdoor environmental space. So all OWEB folks are welcome, staff and board, to join us for Land Camp. I also want to share that in part of our partnership services are webinars. And in April, we led one that really focused on ODF rulemaking around wildfire mapping. This is, as we've heard in the agenda throughout, wildfire is just front and center and woven into all we are doing and how we are thinking as land managers. So coordinating with ODF, being engaged with that rulemaking is really important. We also led one on the private forest accords, and it was brought up earlier with the board that the Oregon Conservation Recreation Fund is going to be housing those dollars. And I think it's actually up more toward 12 million, going up to 25 million that will be available for restoration, riparian work and investments. So it's really exciting collaborative opportunity with OWEB. So let me know if you want to watch those webinars. And then just wanted to share, we have a new member at Colt. I'll wear my Colt hat for a second, an organization called the Black Oregon Land Trust, BOLT. And I know, Lisa, you know Shantae Johnson, fabulous leader who served on the Board of Ag. And she is a co-founder of this land trust. Their mission is to ensure Black farmers and that they have access to land and intergenerational health and wealth. And Colt is very proud to now have them part of our membership and our collective effort. And lastly, I just want to return to a topic that was brought up during the director's report around the Greenbelt Land Trust property that is really an amazing link in a 12,000 acre connectivity habitat geography. And I think we are also sad that this could not align with OWEB acquisition funding. And because we need to place people on these lands to be able to value and experience the incredible resources we have in Oregon. And I just want to say I really agree with Director Sharpillas Hansen's words about centering a human overlay. And I think going forward, ways we can look at how all access trail and habitat protection aren't mutually exclusive. It's just a really core passion for our organization members as well. So thank you for your commitment to that as a board and team. So I think that is it for me.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. Is there anyone from OACD on the phone at our, nope, I don't see anybody. Okay. Well, thank you for your public comment, everybody. So we are at 12 o'clock. Are we okay taking a half-hour break and come back at 12:30? Lisa, and that sound good? Okay. See you all back at 12:30.
Hey, Mark, we are taking a lunch break until 12:30.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry. I was
welcome.
gone so long. So see you back at 12:30.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Lisa, I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
Could be Eric, but I got an announcement about our listening sessions, and it came through another agency. So they were spreading it out, which is great to see. There was a place for me to register for certain times, and I couldn't get in there. Is that a common issue, or am I blocked?
You're not blocked, I don't think, but Jessie has her hand up and she said she can respond.
Okay, great.
I can. It's something about the federal agency pass through there. We've gotten that somebody else emailed us about the same problem. Like somehow when the federal agency then forwarded the invite out, it's like whatever they did in their attachment, it's like through the email filter, it just won't work. So just, Liza Jane, I would just go to OWEB's website and register through there. But we got another email from somebody else. The same thing happened when it went through a federal agency that forwarded the invitation out.
Okay, I wonder how many more people that's happening to. If a note could go to federal agencies to send people to the OWEB website or something, if they can't get on, might be good.
Yep, a good suggestion.
Thanks for that feedback.
Yeah, I want to listen. I'm excited about this. So it's 12:30, and I'm looking forward to hearing from Eric and Courtney and Jessie about the board climate resolution engagement update.
All right, good afternoon. Nice to see all of the board members. For the record, Jessie Kirshner, Water and Climate Programs Coordinator at OWEB. And I'm going to be providing an update on the climate resolution public engagement process. And then my team can provide any other input that they want after I'm done. I do want to very quickly share, I have a couple of slides, not very many, just to remind everybody of where we're at. Hopefully you can see them. It should just have a timeline on there. Yep, okay. So just as a reminder for the resolution and the public engagement process, so we kicked off in January of 2022 when the board passed the climate resolution. In March of this year, the public engagement process kicked off. So Eric Hartstein and I gave a presentation, a webinar for the Oregon Conservation Partnership, where we just sort of provided an overview of the process and different opportunities to engage. And then we're now in this April to May timeframe where we have a number of the public engagement opportunities available. So we have 6 public listening sessions, a tribal focus group listening session, an online survey. Echo Northwest, our DEI consultant, is going to be conducting interviews with non-traditional partners and adding in some of the questions around the climate resolution to those interviews. And then we also have some one-on-one conversations with different agencies and organizations. So following all of this input through the process in June and July, OWEB staff will be analyzing and summarizing feedback and then presenting it to the board during the July 2022 meeting. And then we have September of 2022 if the board decides to initiate rulemaking, as rulemaking tentatively beginning in September. So I want to spend a bit more time talking about this April to May timeframe and what we've been doing and what we've heard so far. And just a reminder for everybody, the goals of our public engagement process are first just to provide an overview of the climate resolution. What we're finding through both the listening sessions and through responses to the survey is that folks are a little familiar with the resolution, but not all that familiar with it. So we've been providing a background as to like how we got to the resolution, the history of all the work that's been done, and then the content of the resolution. The big piece, of course, is to learn from our stakeholders about the potential challenges and opportunities that are associated with the climate resolution. And then our goal is to use that feedback from our stakeholders to inform considerations around rulemaking. So we have held so far 2 public listening sessions, April 14th and April 20th. Just a little bit of demographic information from the listening session. So we had 30 folks attend over both of those sessions. And we had what you can see representatives from across the state. This is the region pie chart on the left, with fewer folks from the Mid-Columbia or Region 6 represented compared to some of the other regions. Most of our participants that have attended are from soil and water conservation districts and watershed councils, although you can also see we've had federal agencies, nonprofits, for-profits, tribes, and local government folks also in attendance at these listening sessions. I didn't show it on here, but we did also ask people to identify their role within their agency or organization or tribe. And what we found is that the majority of those in attendance, I think 23 of our 30, identified themselves as either an executive director or coordinator or a project and program manager. Although we did have other roles included on the ground implementers, funders, outreach and engagement, and fiscal administrators. So pretty broad representation of roles as well. And just a reminder, we're going to be providing a very detailed overview and analysis of all the things that we've heard through the listening sessions, but I did want to just share a couple of things that we've heard so far. So first, we have heard just general support for incorporating climate considerations into projects that are funded by OWEB. But there has been the suggestion that if rules are adopted that include evaluation criteria, that it is made clear to applicants exactly what they will be evaluated on and provided with some guidance and or training, as well as examples of what good responses are to those questions. And some of the opportunities and benefits that have been identified really include that so many folks are already doing adaptation and resilience work in their projects, but there is an opportunity to tweak their projects even further to enhance climate benefits, both mitigation and adaptation, and extend project longevity. So people talked a lot about for thinking differently about what species we're planting so that they're going to be able to handle hotter and drier conditions in the future. That's going to make our project longevity it's going to last longer because those species are going to survive those different events. Or there might be opportunities to add some new components to their projects that better address some of those new climate impacts that are likely to come their way. So that was an opportunity that folks identified. Some of the basic concerns that were identified were, of course, a lack of capacity. That has come up multiple times in both of the listening sessions, just the need for education, guidance, tools, support and assistance to integrate climate considerations and to respond to the climate questions, or really to better articulate the benefits of the work that people are already doing in terms of climate resiliency, mitigation, and adaptation. Another concern or challenge, but also an opportunity that has come up is just the need for monitoring and measuring and quantifying impact. So having an investment in pre and post monitoring so grantees can better articulate the climate benefits and the impacts of the work that they're having or the work that they're doing. So I'm going to go right back up to this timeline slide. And I just want to, again, draw your attention back here. So we have 4 more listening sessions coming up. The next one is next week on May 3rd. The last one is going to be May 19th. We have the Tribal Focus Group listening session coming up on May 10th. The survey has been available since we did the kickoff webinar in mid-May. We have 30 responses so far. The survey is anonymous and it's just offered as an alternative avenue for folks to provide input. And so if there's folks that even have attended a listening session but didn't get a chance to share a comment, they're encouraged to go to that survey and fill in responses there as well. And then Echo Northwest has kicked off their interviews with the non-traditional partners, so that's happening simultaneously. And then we do have some scheduled one-on-one conversations with a couple of different agencies and organizations that we're going to be talking with separately. So with that, I will stop sharing my slides and just see if folks, Eric Hartstein, Eric Williams, or Courtney have anything that they want to comment on or share.
Thanks, Jesse. I just want to comment on just how well people are showing up to provide this input. Just really impressed with how thoughtful the approach was, both in terms of opportunities and challenges. Being clear about both, and even seeing opportunity as Jesse described, where maybe we weren't expecting to see that much opportunity, and also a desire for on the measurement piece. If OWEB could provide specific tools and guidance, calculators, things of that nature, lots of willingness to use that, and in particular to have a consistent way of doing that piece of this work. I think there was a lot of support for that. But so far, after 2 sessions, really great input, and looking forward to the remaining sessions.
Barbara.
So thanks for doing this. I'm really will be interested to see the results come July. I really love that you're using Eco Northwest. I think that is clever. It's genius. But I have a question. Are your sessions similar?
No, not necessarily, because they're doing one-on-one interviews with these partners. So it's not a group of different stakeholders that are together. It's just a one-on-one interview. They were provided with the questions that we ask in both the survey and that we're asking in the listening sessions. So they're going to be using that as the basis for the climate piece of their conversation that they have with those non-traditional partners. I don't know if any of my team wants to add anything else.
Well, I feel like the findings are going to they're not going to be consistent if they're not asking the same questions, or as just kind of where I feel like there could be, it's almost like 2 different reports.
That is certainly a possibility. So our challenge with the non-traditional partners is having a better understanding of what their familiarity is with OWEB and OWEB's grant programs. So we felt like it was a little bit unfair to be asking really detailed questions about the climate resolution when they may not be all that familiar with our agency to begin with, which is why we went the Eco Northwest route to start to engage with those folks. But your point is certainly valid, Barbara, that it may not be quite as comparable.
But it's an opportunity to bring in different partners. I like that.
Are there any other comments or questions? Courtney or Eric Williams, do you have any other comments? Kelly, please.
Thanks, Kelly Coates for the record. I just want to say how impressed I am with the outreach and how the staff has taken this and run with it, because this is not a small task, and I know it's been quite a bit of work, and there's a lot that goes into it, so thank you. I am planning on attending the tribal listening session, but just more as a fly on the wall, since I'm on the OWEB board and I don't want there to be the conflict of interest there, so I won't really be providing input, but do want to hear what the other tribes have to say at that session, and really appreciate that there was a session specifically for tribes to engage in this conversation. So just thank you guys for your hard work with this.
Thank you, Kelly. And yes, we encourage all of our board members to please attend a listening session if you'd like to. It's been great having board members on our last 2, so encourage anybody who's available to come to the future ones.
Thank you, Jesse. I don't see any other questions or comments, so we can move on to agenda item O.
Thank you, Liza Jane. So now up is the review of the 2023-25 agency budget and policy option packages. Lisa?
Thank you. For the record, Lisa Sharplow-Hansen, Executive Director. So we're bringing to you today what we've been working on in terms of what OWEB is thinking about asking for during the budgetary process. Today's presentation is an informational presentation. You will have an action item in July once we get our budget together with the numbers and we're more complete in it. So we really encourage you to provide us feedback. And if we've missed something, let us know, because we want this to be a really successful package as we move forward. Next slide, Stephanie. So for those of you who are new to the state government budgeting process or are unfamiliar with it, we run on a biennial budget, which is a 2-year budget. It starts July 1 of an odd year and ends June 30th of an odd year. There are 3 steps in our budget process. So the first step is agency request budget, where the agencies have the opportunity to ask for new things. This is really our only opportunity to ask for new things or add programs. All the agencies bring that information together. It goes to the governor and DAS. And through that process and governor's priorities, the governor will create what's known as the governor's recommended budget. And that budget may or may not include everything that we ask for. Typically not, because there are so many competing interests. But the important thing for the board to know is once we get that governor's recommended budget, that's what the agency has to support. We have to support what is in the governor's recommended budget. And that's the one that'll be heard by the legislature during the 23 legislative session. And then the final part of it is the hearings through the legislature and what comes out on the other side, which is the legislatively adopted budget. So that just gives you a sense of process, our opportunities, and where we might have some restrictions in our process. So when we're asking for new programs or staff, those will come in what we call policy option packages. You'll hear us refer to them as POPs. It's just adding new things into the agency budget. And then finally, our agency request budget is due August 31st. So it actually lines up quite neatly with our board meeting for kind of finalizing things as we bring it forward. Next slide. Thanks. So you've heard us talk about it quite a bit over the last 2 days in terms of our current situation here at the agency. You all will remember in 2020 when lottery funds basically were shut off for a quarter, when bars and restaurants closed down. I think it was a quarter and a half, and it really changed the revenue picture for OWEB and parks, and then those other agencies that have subsequent programs that are funded with Measure 76 lottery funds. But what we've seen since we came back after the 2021 legislative session is really unprecedented growth in the agency in terms of new programs relating to emergency response that have come into the agency, drought and fire, new investments in existing programs, additional money for water acquisitions, new programs. OAHP finally got funded during the short session. And then we also have seen, expanded opportunities in terms of agency and board priorities, the work we're doing around climate and water, the work we're doing in DEI and those considerations. And so really what it has pointed to is a need for additional capacity in the agency to sustain over time and have a structure that does that. So the theme I think that you will get as we work through the presentation, and I hand it over to Stephanie, is really OWEB's policy packages are focusing on creating a sustainable organization structure to meet OWEB's needs for where we're at today and into the future. Expanding our coordination around climate and water related work, as well as DEI, taking into account the board's priorities in these areas. And then finally, really, and I'm going to change my word that I had managed, I'm going to call it stewardship. Stewardship of water acquisitions and land acquisitions. And then whatever we need to do in terms of resilience around the disaster funding and how we have to work through that into the future. The disaster funding is new to the agency, and I think in 2021, we would have thought it was one time. And I don't know if that's the case moving forward. So we're trying to build in a little bit of surge capacity there so that we do have the ability to respond when asked to during natural disasters. Okay, Stephanie, slide 4, and I think it's your turn.
All right, can folks hear me? Okay, great. Are you able to hear me okay, Lisa? Okay, great. Okay, thank you. I can't see the mute button with the slides up, I realized. So, so I just wanted to refresh everyone's memory regarding this wonderful flow chart that you saw earlier today. This is the process to stand up a new grant offering. And so just wanted to follow up on Lisa's discussion about workload with this chart. In addition to the tasks that you see on here, and I think Renee covered this a little bit this morning, there are also what I would call background tasks or foundational tasks that involve our IT folks, our financial folks, our reporting team. So a lot of components that they're involved with, like building some of the foundation for the online application and grant administration databases. They're providing data to respond to state data inventory requests. They're updating financial guidance regularly for folks who receive or apply for these funds, and fielding questions about the offerings. So a lot of additional administrative workload in addition to the specific program staff that we're able to bring on. There's also, as you heard earlier, the hiring, the onboarding, the training, the supervision, and the management of folks in all of these programs. And so we really kept all of that in mind, thinking through the agency capacity needs into the future. So you'll notice on the draft list of policy option packages that was included in your packet that one of the items says position adjustments and management resources. And when we talk about that, we're really talking about the agency's management structure and the staffing to reflect all of the different programs and the responsibilities that the agency has today. So this includes, as Lisa was talking about, enhancing our focus on board and agency priorities, such as inclusive and intentional engagement and climate change mitigation and adaptation. And then it also means having the staffing that we need to support the growth in the grant programs and provide those foundational services like database development and refinement, strategic planning, business analysis, accounting, financial management, and just helping our existing and prospective new grantees be successful when they're looking at pursuing opportunities. So this is a big picture overview of our policy packages, and then I'll walk through the different buckets that will be a part of our budget request. So these are really the priorities that are taken in the aggregate that the POPs address. This is in other words, a big picture overview. So as you've heard, we're requesting the management and staffing to create a sustainable structure and workload for the agency into the future and meet anticipated program demands. We're requesting continued and expanded staffing to continue water and climate work. We had originally requested 2 positions for water and climate work back in the 21 to 23 budgeting process. So this is very consistent with that previous request. We're asking for a position to focus on outreach, engagement, and communications, as well as a position to support partner organization capacity. We're asking to continue limited duration positions that we received to support the Oregon Ag Heritage Program to steward the investments in that program. And we're asking to continue positions that we received to administer water acquisition funding. And then we're also requesting funds for staffing, as Lisa mentioned, to steward our acquisition investments. And that is across program types. We're asking to continue the positions and carry over the funding that we received to support the drought and the fire resilience and recovery. I think there was a question about that yesterday about how to carry over those funds. And so the mechanism for those funds to be carried over is a new request in our budgeting process. So, and that's just because, as we talked about yesterday, it's going to be challenging to expend all of that general fund for those different programs by the end of the current biennium. One other note, speaking to the last bullet that you see on this slide, is that several of the resources that we're requesting will help us comply with various new and ongoing state requirements. And I wanted to just share a few examples to give you a sense of what we're talking about. We are required to have an internal auditor. And so we're requesting some funding to help fulfill that requirement. And we're looking at some different options to fulfill that requirement, including sharing services with agency partners. There are also state requirements to have a strategic plan for our information technology, to have a data governance plan, to comply with open data inventories, to provide transparency to folks within the state. And so the IT resources that we're requesting will help us comply with some of those requirements. We're also directed in House Bill 3293, which passed in 2021, to adopt rules around funding for community stakeholder engagement on water projects. And then another piece of legislation that affects OWEB, we're required by House Bill 4077, which passed in the 2022 short session, to establish a public advocate position. And then finally, we're required to ensure compliance with the National Historic Preservation Act for the Pacific Coast Salmon Recovery Funds that we administer. And so we're in the process of learning how that will work, but one of the positions that we'll be requesting would help us with those requirements. So now getting down into a little more detail about the specific packages we're requesting, you'll notice that these requests are divided between grants and operations, and these are the two main buckets of OWEB's budget. So we're reviewing both buckets for you today for your information and feedback. So first, in terms of grants budget enhancements, we're asking for another $10 million investment in the Oregon Ag Heritage Program, and that's to complement the $5 million that was invested this biennium. And then we're also asking for additional budget limitation, or that's really the permission to spend funds in case we have an opportunity to accept and spend either additional federal funds or other funds, or possibly both, in the coming biennium. Moving over to the operations side of the shop, and again, this is looking at enhancements or new components to the budget that we're requesting. When we look at the operations proposed enhancements, again, we're really looking at that sustainable management structure and staffing structure to handle the program and the administrative workload today and into the future, and to support the board and the agency priorities. So that includes expanding land and water acquisition staffing to help steward those land and water acquisitions. And again, that includes acquisitions funded through our existing programs as well as through Ag Heritage. We're asking for another staff position to engage in water and climate work, a position to help further inclusive outreach and engagement efforts, and to help meet those requirements in House Bill 4077 that I mentioned regarding the public advocate. And then we're asking for a position to help support local partner capacity and administer partner capacity grants. And then some contracted services to help meet that auditing requirement and support stewardship of land acquisitions. moving now to a couple of groups of packages that will help support continuity. First of all, and these are items, I should say, that we specifically have to request to continue beyond the current biennium, and that's part of the budgeting process. So first, we're asking to carry over what we expect to be unspent funds in drought and post-fire recovery grant programs. So this is not a surprise that we'll need to carry over some of these funds. We had anticipated that this was likely to happen given the short time frame between the time the funds were allocated and the end of the biennium. And it just takes time to stand up new programs and bring on staff. And then just as we were talking about earlier, there are in some cases supply chain or capacity issues that might limit the pace of the rollout. So we would expect some of the allocations to be spent, but not all of them. And so we've got a placeholder here to request the carryover that we need. For the land and water acquisitions funding that was allocated in the February 22 short session, these funds were deposited into treasury accounts, and so they will automatically carry over, but we still need the permission or the budget limitation next biennium to be able to spend those funds. And so we are requesting the authority to be able to do that. And then we also have a standard continuity request that we make to be able to spend dollars that were committed for projects in previous biennia and the upcoming biennium. So, and then the last group here is some requests that will provide some continuity on the operations budget side. So these are staffing and structure requests to help support the grant programs that we're asking to continue into the new biennium. And then we're also asking to convert some of the limited duration positions in our 21 to 23 budget to permanent positions because we see a long-term need for those positions to help support agency and board priorities. So these include our existing positions focused on water and climate, measuring conservation outcomes, and then providing project management for partnership grants. We're also requesting contracted services for services such as DEI training and legal services for acquisition. So those are a continuity and rolling forward of some allocations we've received in the past. So just to review the connections with these requests and OWEB priorities. I won't read the list here on this slide, but these come from OWEB's strategic plan. And then the last bullet speaks to implementing the climate resolution. So I will also note that our POPs would continue the staffing resources needed to implement the climate resolution in addition to connecting with these strategic plan priorities. So next steps, Lisa described the three-part process. After we get feedback from you today, we'll continue refining and polishing the list of POPs, and we'll bring a more detailed and itemized list to you at the July board meeting. And then our budget is due, the agency narrative, as well as the financial details of what we're requesting is due August 31st. Some of the financial and staffing components have to be submitted either at the end of June or at the end of July. So just a note that some of that may have been already submitted by the time we come back together in July. So thanks for the opportunity to go through the requests that we're considering for the 23 to 25 budgeting process, and happy to take any questions.
All right. I see Bruce's hand raised.
Thank you. Stephanie, great presentation. I have two quick comments. The first is, I believe that OWEB's lean organization reputation has earned it a great deal of bipartisan support historically. And what you've presented appears, at least to me, to be right size requests that will not alter, if all approved, still would not alter the lean organization reputation that OWEB has earned. And secondly, the internal audit function, when that came up at the last budgeting process, it was clear that the size of OWEB did not justify a dedicated internal auditor within the organization, and that function would be shared. I don't see that as having changed. However, since that time, I don't believe that there has been any report to the board about it, about any activity on internal audit. So at some point, a report or detail on how internal auditing, where we think it needs to be used, how it's being used with the OWEB needs to come before the board.
So if I might respond to part of that, we don't have an internal audit function right now at all. It wasn't funded in the previous budget. Our agency, because of the size of the budget in dollars, that's how we fall into the statutory requirement. This has been an issue for multiple agencies for quite some time. And in my old role, I think we had asked for an internal auditor at least 3 budget cycles and had not received one. So it goes on to be a challenge. We could do some work and think about maybe some risk mitigation work. That's one of the things we did in my old role, was to identify places where we thought there were more risk, but it does not completely fulfill that internal audit function that we would like to have and are required to have, Bruce. So thank you for that.
All right, Corey, you have your hand raised.
Hi, that was great, Stephanie. I was just curious, I saw like some repeated like water and climate, this person, water and climate, this, or is it like a one person for each of these, or are you combining some of those roles into a single FTE? I was just wondering what the total ask of positions was. That's my question. Second one is, when this goes through and it's totally approved, how can we help you recruit great people?
Oh, great questions, Corey. So we're asking to continue one existing position that's focused on water and climate work, and then add 1 new position for the reason that we have to ask to continue the existing position is that it's limited duration. And so that's just a part of the budgeting process that you have to ask every biennium. And right, if we're successful in getting the positions, we would love help in recruiting. I would say we've been extremely fortunate in the recruiting that we've done for all the recruitments that you heard about this morning. And I think a lot of that is because we reached out to partners and got their help and support. And so, yeah, I think as we have announcements come out, or even as we have a sense of the timeline and the prioritization for which positions we're going to be recruiting for and when, we would love to have folks help in broadcasting those announcements far and wide.
Thank you. Kelly.
Hi, thanks. Kelly Coates for the record. Great presentation, Stephanie. I have questions around kind of dovetailing off what Corey was asking. I'm just trying to see. So yesterday we talked about how there are 9 new positions with OWEB that you're bringing on now. And some of them are limited duration, but like Lisa was saying, you know, some of these limited duration positions for fire and drought probably are going to need to continue into the future. So I'm just trying to figure out how many new positions beyond those 9 new positions will be brought on with this budget, and then how many of the 9 new positions will continue to be funded into the future. It's almost like I feel like I need a chart or you know, like an Excel spreadsheet or something, you know.
Yep. Thank you, Kelly. I'm actually referring to a spreadsheet like that now. Yeah, I think the best thing would be I get back to you, oh, actually, I've got it here. So we're talking about 9.5 new FTE, 7 LD to permanent FTE. So that is a change in their status from limited duration to permanent. And then 9 continued limited duration to limited duration positions. So that adds up to 25.5 FTE, if I'm doing my mental math correctly.
And those would all be folks that were brought on this year or into the future. So in addition to existing staff.
Let's see, 16 of them are, we're talking about existing limited duration positions, if I'm doing my math correctly, and then 9.5 new.
Okay, wow, yeah. OWEB is really growing. That's great. Okay. I have one more question, and this is for the Oregon Ag Heritage Program. I saw there was an ask for 10 million for the biennium, and I know we got 5 million this year. So are we expecting that it'll be about 5 million a year for that program moving forward?
Want me to respond, Stephanie?
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you.
Sure. So we have the one-time 5 million allocation that came to us. We're working really hard to go ahead and get a grant cycle out to see what we get in terms of on the easement side, and try and figure out to match it up. And we've also worked at matching up our cycle with the federal cycle for ASAP. We want to make it attractive, that this is a good investment, because we have to ask for it. And there's no way to know what we might or might not get. The agency had requested funding for OHAP for a couple of sessions and didn't receive it. And so this is one of those times it's hard to predict, but we're gonna dream big and try and show people what it's worth.
Okay, thank you.
Liza Jane, you got your hand up.
Thank you, Barbara. This is Liza Jane for the record. Quick story. I worked at the Nature Conservancy as a steward for the Zumwalt when in 2008, I think I was there when their budget was cut, I don't know, 20, 30% of their staff. And so, but the work still needed to be done. So what happened was, for those of us remaining, we got other people's jobs to do on top of our jobs to do. But just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I know that OWEB experienced the same through this last couple of years, and our remaining staff were doing more work than their own with, I do this /this/. So I'm assuming the answer is yes, but I just want to hear that as you evaluated the needs, those people had things taken off their plate. And so they're not, just because they could, they're not still doing all that work. Has that happened as well? Is that clear?
Yeah. So you are exactly right in terms of what happens during a downsize. The work is still there. One of the things that we've been trying to do is prioritize and saying there's some things that can wait. And it's just going to take longer to get them out the door. And we've tried to do that, aligning it with some of the board's priorities as well. I think where you see that realignment of taking things off of plates right now the most in our vision would be in the management structure. Currently, there are 3 management positions in this agency that are actually classified as managers. Me, Stephanie, and Eric Williams. But we have other people that are in different types of positions that can manage. Eric's grant program has grown significantly. And so as we've looked to our request, we've looked toward thinking about assets and acquisition stewardship and pulling OAHP land and water acquisitions over into its own program that would have its own program manager. We've looked at having a business function with a manager there. We've looked at a reporting and monitoring section, as well as I think it's emergency response, the work that Renee's doing today, so that we spread that load out across the agency. The other thing that I really desire, and we're in conversations with the Department of Administrative Service, is to have Stephanie be a true deputy. Right now, she has program staff, not managers, program staff reporting to her. I believe there's like 7 of them. And so she doesn't get to have the benefit of the time like a normal deputy structure that would be a director. And then whatever functions off of the director, the deputy, and then having those managers report up through the deputy to the director. And so as we've been talking, we're advocating for a more traditional structure to spread some of that out because of the increased workload.
And one more question. In July, could we expect to see a org chart?
Fingers crossed. Yes.
Great.
Mark, you got your hand up.
Yes, one comment, one question. So Stephanie, disregard the chat I sent you. Shannon Hearn from ODF&W, as many people know, that agency is big enough where it does require an auditor. And so I mentioned to her that the OWEB might be willing to share an auditing position. And so maybe you two could talk. And so she responded right back and she says, oh yeah, let's talk. So Shannon Hearn is willing to talk to you if you want to carry forward with that discussion, going either way. So just let you know that, because I guess auditors are really hard to find. And so might be there. So, and the other question, or the question is, Lisa, I should know the answer to this, but the governor's budget goes in, and then we get a new governor starting January 1st. So the new governor can accept, modify, throw out, or start all over. Is that correct with the agency budget prior to them going to the legislature for action?
So that's generally correct. Yes. So the agency request budgets, I think of them go into this big pot with all of our requests. The new governor will come in, and the new governor has, I believe, until February 1st to create the governor's recommended budget, and the new governor will be able to set the priorities for that budget going forward, and that's what will be presented to the legislature.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? I have one. I really like the idea of OAHP potentially going off on their own. I like that idea a lot because I think it's going to be a heavy lift. We had our meeting, gosh, Eric, what was it, a couple weeks ago? I can't even remember, but it's going to be a lot of work, and I think that's a wise idea if you can get it to work out. So, all right, nothing else no questions or comments.
I guess I would ask a question back to the board if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Does this feel like we're on target and staying aligned, with board priorities, et cetera? Kelly.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Lisa. I think so. I really do. This aligns with our priorities. I think it's smart planning moving forward. I always worry that, especially hearing how much funding OWEB is getting now and administering, I worry about staff workload. So I think Liza Jane's comment was great. So I think that you're spot on with that, because I worry about staff burnout. I've been there. I've had to backfill multiple positions, and it's not easy. And so I think this is a really good plan moving forward. And I'm looking forward to seeing everything at the July meeting as well. But I think you guys are spot on with this.
Mark.
Well, I'm a hypocrite because if you recall at the one meeting I don't know, the last meeting, I think it was, I said, boy, this is great because OWEB is doing such a great job. People are giving us things to do because they know that we can get things done and we can make it happen. And we've got a great track record. And now I'm going, wait a minute, we're getting too much workload here. What's this? So I'm supportive of it. I just am worried, like you, Lisa, I think about trying to put all the pieces together and the puzzle together to keep us in that area of, we do a great job, give us the work and we'll get it done on the ground. So I'm supportive.
Thank you, Mark. Lisa, do you have any other questions for us? Oh, Meg?
All right. I was just going to add that I agree that the organizational structure needs attention right now. I think it has to be the priority in order to get done all of the additional work that has come OWEB's way. That's kind of, it seems appropriate to me that that would be the focus of the budget.
Thank you, Meg. All right, not seeing any more questions or comments. I'm going to pass the baton to Liza Jane for the next agenda item.
Thank you, Barbara. I'm going to spin the baton and throw it back at you because we have a spot here for public
nope.
comment.
Oh, yep.
Yep. And we don't have any this afternoon.
All right, I will take it. So is there any other business for us to discuss today? Any staff? Lisa, did I hear you say yes? Oh.
Yes, we need to recognize a couple of board members for their service.
Yep.
So that's
okay. Meg, you had your hand up.
I did, but it was about what Lisa just brought up. So I'm going to be quiet now.
Well, I was checking to see if there was business that needed to be done first. So now, so as we all learned earlier or yesterday, that this is Molly's last meeting and it is Paul's last meeting with us. So I wanted us to have an opportunity to just to wish them well. And I personally just thank you both for your service. And I think I've only met you both twice in all the time I've been on this board, but I just appreciate all your time and input and insight and intelligence. So thank you very much for your service. Anybody else?
Well, let me just say something first. First of all, thank you for that, Barbara. And folks who didn't maybe see my email, I'm going to be retiring June 22nd. Because apparently I went pretty quickly from being sort of the youngest person in my cohort and the guy who's sort of the practical joker and the one who was so, pushing some envelopes to now I'm the oldest guy on everything. Apparently it just is driving me crazy. But so I'm taking off, but I do want to say to the OWEB folks, especially I don't see any of the newer folks that you introduced earlier that have joined the team. But to them, I guess I just want to say they're joining an amazing team. I've worked in government from Alaska to Hawaii to California, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, and this OWEB team, the two Erics, Courtney, Renee, Stephanie, of course, Lisa, you and Maida before you, is just one of the best good government groups I've seen in my work. So I just want to throw that out there to say how much it sort of reflects what Mark said, that you're doing too good a job, that people are actually coming to you, to fix their problems or for more, to give you work because you do it really well. So I just want to say I've learned a lot and it's been a pleasure, even being a non-voting member. So I can't really, steer things too much other than make a comment from the outside here and there, but to say thanks to you all and especially to all this great group of board members. So thank you.
Steven.
Yeah, to Molly and Paul, it's unfortunate we're not back meeting face to face because the tradition, as you all know, is to go out and to dinner and toast some drinks and even roast you all a little bit and point out your strengths and idiosyncrasies, but won't do that on here. But it's really been a pleasure working with you, and as the longest serving board member, I guess now I've seen everybody come and everybody go, and it's always it's always sort of I guess very sad to see people go, because they come and they work and you get to know them and then they leave, and so I'm sorry to see you guys go, and I wish you the best, and particularly Paul in his retirement. So it's been a lot of fun working with you guys, and good luck. Thanks for your work on the board.
Thank you, Steve.
Meg.
Oh, I just wanted to add my thanks and congratulations to Paul, who is, oh, there you are, who is lucky enough to be retiring. Your retired life sounds great. I mean, from your email, and you've been a great contributor, and I will miss seeing you on the screen and in person. Molly, you're not retiring, but I will miss your input as well, which has always been really productive. And I'm sorry we're not going to see each other in person again before you switch out for somebody else, but I appreciate everything you've done, and we'll miss seeing you. Thanks to both of you.
Thank you.
Mark.
I'm trying to look at both of you at the same time, but you're a little bit too far apart. But I'll say this: Oregon is better off, and Oregon's natural resources is better off because of your services to the state. And you should be very pleased with what you've accomplished. And thank you for your service to Oregon, and thank you for your service to Oregon's natural resources. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Mark.
Dan.
Hey, Molly, Paul, congratulations to both of you. Thank you for your service. Paul floored us all, I think, with his announcement of retirement. Paul, you don't look that old, and I know you don't feel that old. I've worked with Paul. Molly, I haven't had a chance to really get to know you and work as closely as I have with Paul over a good part of my career. And the good news is that I'm an OSU alum, so I'll use that as a free ticket and a way to come down and visit with you anytime. Paul, we're going to miss you. Folks, I don't know if you know how lucky, tagging on to Mark's comments, that we are to have had Paul's service in the state of Oregon. I often boast about Paul being one of the best state supervisors in the entire U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service across the country. And that's just not an understatement, folks. That's the God's honest truth. Paul, I adore that map behind you. It looks like you'll be doing some bird watching, probably some fishing. Just want to thank you. Are those fish or are they birds? I can't tell.
It's actually a 1960 Blitz Beer Sportsman's Map of Oregon. So, that I found in a bar that was closing down. So.
That would be my good friend, Paul Henson. Yeah, there you have it. Really want to thank you for your service, and Molly, look forward to getting to know you better, even though you will no longer be a OWEB board member.
No, thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
Liza Jane.
Thank you, Barbara. Oh, you too. I like hellos a lot. I'm not so good at the goodbye, so we'll just ignore that and know that I'll see you again. Molly, you have such a kind, gentle, calm way of providing information that's so helpful. And I thought that in the beginning, when you first started talking, I was like, whew, that's powerful and valuable. And you've stayed steady with that. Paul, you have the same, and my image of you, because I've been looking at it for a couple of years, you're always so relaxed and kicked back in your spot. So ahead of time, when I think about who we'll see and there you are in this swinging recliner, you're listening, you have this great feedback, and I'd like to say to you that you break a lot of stereotypes about the U.S. fish and wildlife. And you may not be aware of that, but it's huge. It's really important. And for both of you, you are always welcome. I consider you friends, and I carry great appreciation for the values and passions we both share. So I know you'll carry on with those things that are important to you. And I'm glad that we've become part of each other's lives. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Liza Jane.
Bruce?
Thanks. You know, when I got the retirement email from you, Paul, I thought that can't happen because I haven't figured out a way to go fishing with you yet. And, but I knew that was selfish and thought, well, he's earned it and he will be fishing and maybe I'll see him. And then when I heard Molly today, it was the same sort of, that's not fair to me sort of thing because I like every, so anyway, I wish you both well. And in this world of Zoom, I will just say that the little yellow hands that go up in the corner, when I see a little yellow hand from Paul or Molly, I just automatically smile because I know what's coming next is something that I either want or need to hear, and I'll miss that. Thanks.
Thanks, Bruce. I'll just give you a heads up though. I'll have more time to go fishing now, obviously. I'm heading down to California tomorrow, actually, for the California opener with a bunch of my old friends down there behind Shasta and Lassen. And if any of you see an old 1962 Shasta trailer with the wings, blue and white, like parked at Mecca Flat or the Oahe or something, that's my trailer. It looks kind of like a homeless guy's trailer, so it sort of is, but that's you can knock on the door, and if no one answers that means I'm out on the river. So, but definitely stop if you see it, and a lot of people have actually. So, thank you, Bruce.
Kelly.
Yeah, thanks. So I know I'm still kind of a newbie on the OWEB board, and I haven't had a chance to interact very much with, I think, only 2 meetings officially with both of you on the OWEB board. But I have to echo everything everyone said. You know, it's been really great working with you. I've learned a lot from both of you on this board, just listening to your input. It's always been valuable and very much appreciated, and thank you for that. Paul, I was sad to see your retirement email because you have been such a strong supporter of the initiatives that Cow Creek has had, supporting us, you know, when we were just getting our lamprey work started. I'll remember conversations with you about beavers and coho. So I really appreciate the interactions that we've had over the years. And I agree completely with Dan. We've been very lucky to have you in the Fish and Wildlife Service in the position that you've been in. And just thank you so much for your service, and thank you so much for your support over the years.
Thank you, Kelly. I really appreciate that.
All right, Director Hanson.
Thank you. So on behalf of OWEB and all the staff, thank you for your service. You two have been amazing board members. And I would just echo Liza Jane's, the calm, relaxed demeanor, the knowledge. It has been very, very much appreciated. I wish I would have gotten to spend time with you both in person a little bit because I would love to know more about you and have you impart some more of your wisdom on me. I have taken a lot from the conversations that I have had with both of you. So thank you for that. And thank you for your contribution to OWEB. Thank you for your contribution to natural resources. And thank you for your service to the state of Oregon.
Thank you, Lisa.
Molly, you've taken this all with such grace. Now it's time for you to talk.
I'm going to say I'm with Liza J, and I'm more of a hello than a goodbye person. So it's not goodbye. It is, if you're ever passing through Corvallis, you have a place to stop. Love to take you out to lunch, put you up, or anything else. We're nice halfway through the state. So there is no goodbyes. And I just really want to say how much I've appreciated being a board member. I have only kind of gotten involved with this type of civic governments in Oregon for the last couple of years. And I really do hold OWEB up as a gold standard for how this can be done. I think the representation you have across the state, which is in this board, the time people put into it, the thoughtfulness with which people put into the service when they're thinking about this, the focus that the agency keeps to, the way it is even managed. Like, I wish I could steal your slide sets even for, other groups that I'm part of, to say, like, this is how you can keep to a strategic plan and really make long-term impacts. So I have gained so much experience and knowledge from all of you. I really appreciate it. And when you're passing through, please do reach out. I'm still here in Corvallis, and you can find me in the basement of Milam Hall Monday through Friday. So take care, everybody.
Thank you. All right. I think, yeah, I wish we could have roasted you guys over dinner, but we won't do it on YouTube live streaming.
So Barbara, if I might add, Paul and Molly, you can anticipate a Made in Oregon something coming your way in the mail. We wish we were together so that we could give it to you personally. So once again, thank you. And then just as we're kind of winding down, wrapping up, I want to thank the whole board for your time over the last 2 days, your contribution, your insight, and again, your wisdom as we've been working through the agenda and the important work of OWEB and how we better engage with our partners going forward. So thank you for all of that, and so appreciate your time and knowledge.
So, Mark, did you have your hand up? Okay. Okay. So with that, I really appreciated the closing of some training we had this morning. And I loved it what she said, may the roads open up for all of us. So with that, I will adjourn this meeting, and I can't wait to see you all in July. Thank you, everybody.